Chapter 459. Aisha pouted. As long as we are not discovered by the guards, it is not difficult to climb over the wall. Dudian was speechless. He was shocked. The girl in front of him was too terrible. What kind of physique was she to be able to climb over the high wall of the inner wall when she was 7 or 8 years old? Moreover, the witch family's nurturing methods were also incredible. Such a young girl was able to possess such powerful strength. Even if she had absorbed God's blessings since she was in her mother's womb, she might not have been able to become so powerful. Unfortunately, this method isn't suitable for you. Aisha sighed with regret. Suddenly, her eyes turned as she said in a pleasantly surprised tone, "I have an idea." "Huh?" Dudian was puzzled. Aisha happily said, "If you want to see me in the future, then we can go outside the giant wall to meet. You were summoned by the monastery, so you should have a good relationship in the outer wall area. Moreover, I can see that your physique is extraordinary, so you should be a hunter in the outer wall area. You can go outside the giant wall, and I can also go from the inner wall area to the outside of the giant wall area. We can meet outside the giant wall at the same time." Dudian looked at her happy expression. He was slightly startled. His heart couldn't help but feel touched. But he quickly responded, "That's not good. It is dangerous outside the giant wall, if that's true." Aisha's eyes lit up. "I can go to find you. You just need to stay in a safe place so that there won't be any danger." Dudian was touched by her words, but he didn't say anything. His throat slightly moved as he softly said, "I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about you. It is too dangerous for you to cross the mountains outside the giant wall to see me. If you want to see me, then you have to choose a place, and I will come and find you." Aisha immediately shook her head. "I didn't think about it before, but now that I have thought about it, it is absolutely impossible. There's a long way to go from the inner wall to the outer wall. Moreover, the monsters outside the inner wall are far more dangerous than the outer wall. It is too dangerous for you to come over." Dudian hesitated for a moment. "I have a special life-saving technique. Don't worry, there won't be an accident." Aisha snorted and said, "Don't look down on me. I am very strong. There is no danger for me to walk in this monster area. This matter is settled. You are not allowed to argue anymore." Dean smiled as he looked at her delicate but strong appearance. In fact, he had already noticed that the girl's body was as hot as fire. He had only seen such a strong heat when he sneaked into the inner wall last night. Even Francis's body wasn't as hot as Aisha's. Even the woman who was hugged by the elder was inferior to Aisha's body. Moreover, from her tone, he knew that she had climbed over the inner wall. At that time, her strength was already so tyrannical. Now, she must have reached the pinnacle of strength. It was estimated that she was not inferior to the girl in the Tang suit. It was a pity that he didn't have thermal vision when he met the girl in the Tang suit. He couldn't observe the heat of the latter's body, otherwise he could use it as a reference. "Well, let's meet at the western corner of the giant wall," Dudian said. Aisha smiled. "Well, when are you free? I'll come and find you." Dudian estimated 7 days later. 7 days? Aisha nodded. "All right, I'm free too. Let's meet at the western corner of the giant wall in 7 days. Come on, let's pinky swear." She stretched out her pinky finger. Dudian smiled and immediately stretched out his hand to make a pinky promise with her. "You said you were going back tonight? It is still early, so I'll take you around. Is it your first time coming to the inner wall? I'll take you to play." Aisha laughed. Dudian thought of Francis. He hesitated for a moment, but nodded. "All right, I'll trouble you." "It's no trouble. I came out to play. There is an old saying in the Dragon Clan. It's better to have fun together than to have fun alone." Aisha smiled. Dudian was surprised, as he didn't expect to hear such an old saying. He couldn't help but glance at her Cheongsam. He thought of some ideas. However, it was the first time they met, so it was not convenient to ask about such a secret matter. Aisha saw that Dudian was looking at her, so she blinked and said, "What do you think? Do my clothes look good?" Dudian's heart jumped as he retracted his eyes. "It looks good." Aisha giggled, but didn't say anything. The carriage continued to move forward. Dusk. A wagon with a black dragon flag flew out of Eden and headed towards the relay station outside the city. Aisha looked at Dudian in the carriage. There are a few places I wanted to take you to play, but it's getting late. If you have the opportunity to enter the inner wall, then I'll take you to play." Dudyan smiled. "There will be opportunities in the future." The carriage stopped at the station. Dean glanced at it, but didn't see Francis's carriage. Francis had probably gone back in advance. He had expected it, so he didn't care. He turned to Haisha and said, "Thank you for your hospitality today. See you next time." 7 days later, Aisha said with a smile. Dudyan smiled and nodded. Aisha put down the curtain and the carriage moved away. Dean looked at the carriage until it disappeared from his line of sight. He went into the station and asked the boss for a horse. He had a bag of gold coins with him, but he didn't bring any gold notes. After all, gold notes were issued from the banks in the outer wall. There may not be a place to exchange them in the inner wall. So, real gold was the most useful thing to use. Dudyan spent a gold coin to buy a horse. He sighed at the high prices in the inner wall. It was more than 10 times that of the outer wall. He rode the horse away from the city of Eden. He couldn't help but recall the process of playing with a girl he hadn't seen for a long time. There was a faint smile on his face. Unknowingly, he rode his horse back to the front gate of the monastery on Mount St. Paulo. As soon as he got off the horse, several young men and women dressed as saints appeared with weapons in their hands and surrounded him with stern expressions. Dudyan frowned and was about to open his mouth when a voice came from the front. "Wait." Dudyan looked over and saw Francis riding a horse. He quickly got off the horse and came to the front of the saints. "You didn't run away?" "Run away?" Dudyan understood. "Where can I run to?" Francis looked at Dean's appearance. It didn't seem like Dean was pretending. He waved his hand, and the other saints retreated to the side. They stood in a faint posture of encirclement. Francis said in a bad mood, "I told you to wait for me there, but you disappeared as soon as I came back. I thought you took the opportunity to slip away. The courtyard has issued a wanted order for you, but it hasn't been sent out yet. Fortunately, you came back by yourself, or else." Dudyan was speechless and angry. "You should know that I can't run away because of my identity. I will die if I run away. That's what happens when you don't listen to me." Francis shrugged. "I'm only in charge of reporting. It's up to the higher-ups to deal with it. You can only blame yourself for running around." Dudyan's face sank as he knew that it was useless to argue. "Can we go back now?" "Of course." Francis whispered a few words into the saint's ear. He patted the saint's shoulder. "Let's go." Chapter 460. The night was coming. A team of snow lions galloped out of the giant stone wall and went straight along the official road in the wilderness. The handover of the outer wall has been handled properly. You just need to go there and accept the order," Francis said to Dean as he pulled the fur of the snow lion. "If you don't want to expose your current identity, then wear the mask when we reach the giant wall." Dean silently looked in front of him. He knew that he wouldn't have the chance to enter the inner wall until his identity was exposed or he lost his value. He would be discarded by the inner wall as a chess piece. There was silence along the way. A few hours later, they crossed half of the wilderness of the inner wall and came to the front of the high wall. They met several monsters along the way. Francis beheaded all of them and left their corpses on the side of the road. Dean put on the mask that Francis gave him and rode the snow lion to the front of the high wall. Francis went forward to greet the 2 soldiers who were guarding the gate. The 2 soldiers cooperated with each other and pulled the valve to open the passage. Francis left the saint to lead Dean through the passage. It was around 10 o'clock in the evening. Curfew time had arrived, even in the bustling areas. Francis took Dean to the suburbs and went all the way. Dean breathed in the humid air of the wilderness. He felt relaxed, as if he was a fish returning to the sea. After more than an hour, Francis and Dean came to a small town on the outskirts of the western part of the commercial district. The town was dark, and most of the households had turned off the lights to sleep. Most of the people living in the suburbs were civilians. It was a luxury for them to burn oil lamps for the night. Francis tied the snow lion to a big tree outside the town. "Let's go in." Dean narrowed his eyes. He tied the snow lion to a big tree and followed Francis into the town. The wind was particularly strong at night. It blew into the streets of the town like the cries of ghosts. The people in the town had long been asleep. The cold wind accompanied Dean and Francis as they walked on the street, lifting up the fallen leaves. After Francis entered the town, he looked around as if he was looking for something. After a moment, his eyes locked on a relatively remote house. The house was quite simple, and there was not much difference between it and the house next to it. But Dean noticed that Francis's eyes were attracted by a string of dried fish hanging on the house. His heart moved as he looked at the dried fish. He found that the dried fish was not an ordinary river fish, but a relatively rare blackwater fish. Blackwater fish had black spots all over their body. They lived by eating other small fish. They usually lived in the mud and were difficult to catch and fish. He took a deep look and turned to look inside the house. Using his thermal vision, he immediately saw that there were 4 extremely hot figures under this simple house. 2 of them were sleeping in the bedroom, and 2 of them were in the basement of the house. One of them was standing. While he was looking around, Francis walked to the door of the house with the blackwater dried fish hanging on the wall and gently knocked on the door. The 2 figures sleeping in the bedroom of the house immediately raised their heads, including the 2 people sleeping out of the house, and looked over. Soon, a figure in the bedroom stood up, and the room was soon lit up by a dim yellow light. The lock behind the door was opened, and the door slowly opened, revealing an old face. The old man looked at Francis up and down and asked in surprise, "Who are you?" Francis whispered, "Dark eternal life." The old man's pupils shrank, and he was relieved. He immediately opened the door gently. His previously sleepy eyes flashed with intelligence. He glanced around and noticed Dean, who was wearing a mask. He whispered, "Come in." Francis stepped in, and Dean followed closely behind. The old man waited for the 2 of them to enter before sticking his head out of the door and looking around. Seeing that the night was dark and no one was paying attention, he gently closed the door and locked it. At this time, another old woman walked out of the bedroom and bowed to Francis respectfully. "Greetings, Saint." Francis nodded. "Where is Carrie?" The old man closed the door and said, "Elder Carrie is below. Holy Envoy, please follow me." He held the oil lamp in his hand and led the way to the basement. He lit the lamp on the wall. The basement was a wine cellar. It was very spacious. 2 figures were standing there. One was an old man, and the other was a young man. Francis smiled as he saw the old man. "Elder Carrie." The old man looked at his clothes. "Saint, please show your medal." Francis took out his saint medal and handed it over. The old man nodded and handed it back to him. His eyes swept to Dean. "Is this the new elder who will take over? He doesn't seem to be too old." Francis laughed. "You don't need to worry about it. Elder Carrie, please finish the handover as soon as possible. I'll take you back tonight." Carrie nodded and looked at Dean. "I have informed the elders about the handover and got a promise. You only need to report to the elders. Also give yourself a code name. Our dark church uses code names. Also, let me introduce you to my assistant Hawkeye. He will help you to understand your position in the dark church. I hope you can arrange a good place for him once you don't need him anymore." Francis pointed to the young man next to him. Dean looked at the young man. The young man didn't wear a mask. He had pure golden hair. He was extremely handsome and had a gentle expression. However, there was a hint of evil in his eyes. "Hello." Dean adjusted his voice. It was easy for him to control his Adam's apple and change his voice. "Hawkeye greets the elder." The young man nodded with a smile. Francis said, "In that case, I'll leave the rest to you. I'll wait for you here. Be sure to come back before 4 o'clock in the morning." Carrie nodded. He took out a mask from his robe and put it on. He looked at Dean. "Then let's go. I'll take you to the headquarters so that everyone can get familiar with you." Dean nodded. Chapter 461. Dean followed Carrie out of the town. There was a carriage parked outside the town. There was a flag on it. Dean recognized that it was the flag of Shah-Air family. Shah-Air family was a middle-level aristocratic family under the Scott Consortium. They were mainly engaged in the real estate business in residential areas. Dean didn't expect that they would have dealings with the dark church. Hawkeye acted as the coachman as they got on the carriage. "I'll call the carriage from the Shah-Air family to cover for you." Carrie smiled. "The Shire family is one of the big families under us. You have to have good relations with them in the future. Dean silently nodded. He knew that many nobles had dealings with the Dark Church, but he didn't expect it to be so deep. He asked, "Was the house in the town our temporary stronghold?" Carrie nodded. "It is our high-level secret liaison office. The two elders you met are high-level intelligence personnel of the Dark Church. They have been in charge of intelligence for decades. You can ask them if you want to know anything, but don't use them easily in case their identity is exposed." Dean looked at him. "Were you transferred from the inner wall?" Carrie seemed to know what he was going to ask. "I am about to retire, so there is no harm in telling you the truth. I was originally entrusted by the monastery to be an elder, and now that I have completed my term, I will be promoted to an elder of the monastery's supervision department. From your voice, I can tell that you are still young. I hope you can hold on, and if you meet any of my students in the monastery in the future, you will be able to take care of them." Dean nodded. "I'll try my best." Carrie smiled. "You shouldn't trust anyone in the Dark Church besides Hawkeye. Don't expose your true identity to anyone. The people here are sinister. I hope you can take care of yourself." Dean was silent. He thought that he wouldn't trust even Hawkeye. The carriage entered the city. There were several patrolling guards along the way. It stopped in a remote area of the city. "Here we are." Carrie got off the carriage and tidied up his clothes. They came to a luxurious manor. The guards at the door were respectful as they saw Hawkeye hand out metal. They led the way for the three of them. When they arrived at the manor, a woman in a black suit stepped forward and waved her hand to dismiss the guards. She then saluted Carrie and said, "Greetings, Sir Elder." Carrie nodded slightly and said, "Little Crow, this is the new elder I mentioned." The woman in the black suit had long noticed Dean and immediately saluted, "Greetings to the new elder." Duddian nodded as he remembered her appearance, voice, and smell. The woman in the black suit bowed and turned around to lead the way. They followed a dark passage in the manor to the basement. The basement was winding and had many hidden doors. After several forks, they arrived at a passage that was more than 10 meters deep. After walking straight for a while, they arrived at a spacious underground square. There was melodious music floating in the air. There were a lot of people of the Dark Church gathered in the square. Most of them were wearing masks. Only a few of them were staff of the Dark Church, so they didn't need to wear masks, because they no longer needed to live in the outside world. Krebby's arrival immediately caused a burst of exclamations. The people who were whispering all over the square suddenly gathered and saluted Krebby. Carrie smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to retire. This is the new elder of the 9th region. Everyone warmly welcome him." The crowd was surprised as they heard the news, but many of them got the news in advance. They showed a respectful smile and congratulated loudly. "Welcome the new elder. Welcome." In a burst of applause and cheers, Dean nodded slightly as a greeting. Carrie waved his hand to signal the crowd to retreat. He led Dean to a towering hall at the back of the square. There were two lifelike, dark angel sculptures at the entrance of the hall. They were overlooking the people in the square. Carrie led Dean into the hall. The members of the Holy Church bowed from afar. They didn't straighten up until Carrie and Dean went up the stairs. "This is the headquarters of the 9th region. It's also the place where I usually work." Carrie came to the second floor of the castle. It was luxuriously decorated. The walls were inlaid with scarlet wallpaper, as if smeared with blood. The atmosphere was gloomy. Hawkeye stepped forward and pushed open a door. There was a spacious room inside. Carrie came into the room. "This is my office. This desk is filled with documents from below. I've helped you deal with most of the recent matters. I'll leave the rest to you. Don't worry, with Hawkeye's help, I'll be able to help you." Duddian nodded and looked around, but the wide field of vision allowed him to see everything around him without looking around. Carrie saw that Dean was listening attentively. He smiled. "We elders usually don't have much to do except to solve some necessary troubles and disobedient people. The rest of the time is very free. You're about to take office. This is the animal glue mask prepared for you. You can change your face shape by needing it. Even if you don't have a mask in the future, you will be able to see people with the animal glue mask." He took out a flat, delicate box from the drawer and handed it to Dean. Duddian was startled, as he didn't think that there would be such a magical thing. He looked at Carrie, and found that there was no blood in the depths of his pores. No wonder Carrie dared to show his true face. It turned out that he was also using the animal glue mask. This is exclusive to the elders. If you lose it, you have to promptly apply to the higher-ups. But the application procedures will be very troublesome. So don't lose it or give it to others. It's very troublesome to make. It's not sold outside. It's the top internal item of the Dark Church. Carrie said. Dudian nodded and took the things. Elder, what do you mean by the 9th region? Carrie smiled. You will know about this in the future. But since you have asked, I will tell you that the forces of the Dark Church in the outer wall are divided into 12 regions. The 9th region is under the control of 12 elders. The Hawkeye will give you a detailed introduction of the main scope and the forces that are in contact with our subordinates. I won't go into details. Dean understood and asked, will there be conflicts between our regions? Carrie glanced at him. It seemed as if he could see into the depths of Dean's eyes. Carrie smiled. Conflicts are inevitable. Small conflicts are left to be solved by themselves. Big conflicts need to be decided by the Council of Elders. So if you want to have a good life, then you need to have a good relationship with the Council of Elders. At present, the 12 districts are divided into 3 factions. I used to belong to the Night King's faction. Now that you have inherited my position, you can choose to join a new faction or choose not to join any faction. But my suggestion is to continue to follow the Night King's faction. Night King? Dean's eyes narrowed. Yes, the Night King is the code name of the 3rd Elder. He is in charge of the 3rd region. It's one of the best regions in the 12 regions. There are many alchemists and potion masters under his command. Many of them are 5-star great alchemists and even great potion masters. They are extremely terrifying. On the surface, he has connections with the Scott Consortium's Chai family and the Huashan Consortium's Jet family. He has an unfathomable voice in the Elders' Council. Chapter 462. Dean's eyes narrowed as he listened. The Scott Consortium's Chai family has a deep relationship with the Dark Church. The Melon Consortium can compete with the Scott Consortium, so there should be a strong Dark Church behind it. Dean's eyes lit up. There was no movement when the Melon Consortium disintegrated. Wait, is it the dark forces behind the Melon Consortium that tried to assassinate me in the Poison Soup and the Scarlet Grand Canyon? Dean's eyes flashed as he thought of this. There was a trace of killing intent in his eyes. Elder, the Night King has dealings with the Scott Consortium, so the other consortiums should have dealings with the other elders, right? Dean calmly said to Carrie. Carrie nodded and said, basically, but it's not clear who is in contact with whom. I've only heard some rumors, but I can't be sure. However, I know that the elders of the 12th and 7th districts are competing for the support of a new consortium. Now that you've taken office, you might as well give it a try. If you can win over this consortium, then our 9th district won't be so weak. Are you referring to the New World Consortium? Yes, it's the New World Consortium that destroyed the Melon Consortium. Carrie nodded. The New World Consortium had the support of the Genius Dean. They had swallowed the Melon Consortium, and all the industries had been seized. In a short period of time, they have grown rapidly. It is estimated that it won't be long before they replace the Melon Consortium and become the new big consortium. Although the genius behind them has been arrested by the inner wall, but they may be able to come out again in the future. Once they win over the New World Consortium, they may be able to get the favor of the genius in the future. Dean asked, I've heard about it. Elder, why did the inner wall arrest him? Carrie smiled. I heard that saints from the monastery were ordered to arrest him. They said that he was colluding with the Dark Church. In my opinion, this should be a false story. If he had the Dark Church's people behind him, then he would have used the Dark Church's power to destroy the Melon Consortium. But he didn't use the Dark Church's power in the process. Either he didn't have our people behind him, or he wanted to cover his relationship with the Dark Church, so he didn't use the Dark Church's power. Dean's eyes lit up as he pretended to be surprised. The monastery shouldn't be shooting without a goal. Since they said so, then there must be some evidence. Otherwise, why would they arrest him? Carrie looked at him. We can't come to a conclusion, but we know that the monastery has many motives to arrest him. You should know that the Genius Dean has created 2 legendary items in just 1 year. Moreover, he has created a brand new gas system which has impacted the original 9 systems. Alchemists, potioneers, diviners, and other occupations of the Dark Church have a strong impact on the alchemists, pharmacists, diviners, and other occupations of the Dark Church. If we give him a few more years, then he will be above everyone in the outer wall. The inner wall has no reason to let such a dangerous existence grow. They have to kill him or win him over. Otherwise, it will be a disaster for other forces. The monastery is just casually looking for a crime. Their purpose is to send him to the inner wall. Dean pretended to ponder. If that is the case, then why don't they summon him openly? Carrie smiled. You think too simply. If they summon him openly, then the other forces of the inner wall will take a fancy to him. Then they can come over and make friends with him. If they arrest him, then they will have a reason to refuse other forces. So that's how it is. Dean was enlightened. I might be able to see him when I retire to the inner wall. I really want to see him with my own eyes. He should be a high-level figure if he is recruited by the monastery, Carrie said in an expectant tone. Dean's eyes lit up. Elder, are you from the inner wall? Carrie was surprised. Why do you ask? I see that you are very familiar with the inner wall. I'm not familiar with it. Carrie laughed. The monastery is the force behind the Holy Church. Why would I come to the outer wall if I'm from the inner wall? Isn't that too much to do? Dean was startled. So it is the first time for Elder to go to the inner wall? Yes, I have retired. The same will take me to the Dark Parliament in the inner wall. Carrie laughed. Dark Parliament? Yes, the forces of the Dark Church in the inner wall are irreconcilable with the monastery. It's similar to the relationship between us and the Holy Church. Carrie smiled. Dean was startled. There was a trace of complex feelings in his heart as he looked at Carrie's smile. He would have believed his words if he didn't go to the inner wall and meet the elder of the monastery. But now it seemed that Carrie wasn't from the inner wall, but an elder of the Dark Church who was promoted from the outer wall. However, the monastery had a way to make an elder of the Dark Church trust them. Moreover, he had fabricated a lie about the Dark Parliament. Dean didn't know what would happen to Carrie after he entered the inner wall. Would he be obliterated halfway, or would he be used by the monastery again? He didn't think too deeply about it. There were too many possibilities. Perhaps what Carrie was saying now was just a pretense. You can ask Hawkeye if there is anything you don't understand. He is my confidant and absolutely trustworthy. Carrie patted Dean's shoulder. I'll leave the 9th region to you. If I have the chance to come back, I hope to see a prosperous 9th region. Dean nodded. I'm afraid you won't have the chance. Elder, what if the other elders collude with the Holy Church to frame us? What should we do? Dean asked. Carrie shook his head. It's too risky. If they're found to be colluding with the Holy Church, then they will be boycotted by the elders and kicked out. No one would dare to violate the rules. You shouldn't do such a thing either. Do you understand? Understood. Dean narrowed his eyes. Ever since the jailbreak incident, he didn't follow any rules. Carrie nodded. I'll go first if there's nothing else. Duddy nodded. He and Hawkeye sent him out of the manor. After Hawkeye left, they returned to the headquarters of the Dark Church in the 9th region. You go out first. I'm going to use the animal glue mask, Dean said. Hawkeye respectfully left the room. Dean glanced around the room, pulled up the sheets and bedding in the bedroom, and opened the flat box. Inside was a delicate and thin mask, as transparent as water. He gently sniffed it, but there was no smell. He thought for a moment and put it back into the box. After a while, he called Hawkeye, who was outside the door. Tell me about the situation in the 9th region. Duddian sat on the desk, still wearing the mask. Hawkeye looked at him and nodded. Elder, you are now an elder, so you can't use your previous code name. I hope that you can have a new code name in the future. Dean thought for a moment. The code name will be Nighthawk, the eagle with eagle eyes. Nighthawk. Hawkeye was startled. What? Nothing. It's just a coincidence. There is a 4-star alchemist in the 9th region who is called Nighthawk. Hawkeye said, Elder, you can change it. We can only cancel the code names of those who are below 2 stars. Dean raised his eyebrows and thought for a moment. Let's call him Devil. Devil? Hawkeye was stunned for a moment. I'll go back and check it out. If there is no one who is above 2 stars, then I'll cancel it for you. All right, Dean nodded. Let's report the situation here first. Hawkeye nodded and said, the territory of our ninth district is from Claw Street to Pusey Street in the west of the commercial district. In the commercial district, the residential district, and the slums, our manpower is mainly concentrated in the residential district where the Holy Church's control is loose and convenient for us to act. The main territories of the other elders are also concentrated in the residential district. But most of the 5-star alchemists and potion masters in the 9th region are active in the commercial district. We have 4 5-star alchemists, 2 great potioneers, and 1 great fortune teller. Chapter 463. Dean looked at the information handed over by Hawkeye. Hawkeye, do you also have animal glue mask? Dean casually asked as he looked at Hawkeye. Hawkeye respectfully replied, Elder is joking. Animal glue mask is very rare. We are not qualified to use it. The reason why I dare to show my true face is because I was born in an alchemist family. I was destined to walk this path from birth. It doesn't matter if I have a mask or not. You were born in an alchemist family? Dean was surprised. Hawkeye was trusted by the Elder, so it was normal for him to have such a background. Which family are you from? Randy family. Hawkeye respectfully replied. Dean's eyes lit up. Is it the Randy family that created the human skin bonding alchemy technique 80 years ago? He had paid attention to the other big families of the Dark Church after he learned about the Inferno family. Randy family was one of them, but people like to call them by their nickname, Human Skin Family. Hawkeye respectfully replied, My great-grandfather was the one who created the human skin bonding forbidden technique. Dean didn't expect Hawkeye to have such an extraordinary background. No wonder Carrie valued him so much. I heard that your family's human skin adhesion technique allows you to glue other people's skin to your own body. It can be described as a top concealment technique. Dean said. Hawkeye laughed. Elder, it's been many years. The human skin bonding technique is a forbidden technique. Our family doesn't dare to study it privately. That's why I don't know much about it. Dean didn't force him as he saw that Hawkeye didn't want to reveal more. 3 dark nights, 6 dark grand nights. There was a trace of surprise in Dean's eyes as he read the information. The dark nights were equivalent to the leaders of the senior hunters. Dark grand nights were comparable to ordinary senior hunters. In other words, there were 9 senior hunters under his command. That was 4 times more than the Melon Consortium. Of course, this didn't include the people secretly cultivated by the Melon Consortium. Is the 9th region strong or weak among the regions? Dean asked Hawkeye. Hawkeye respectfully replied, There are only 3 regions which are weaker than us. They are the 6th, 8th, and 11th regions. So it's relatively weak. Dean's heart was secretly awe-inspiring. Even the 9th region had such a defensive force. Wouldn't the other regions have even more? He estimated that there were hundreds of senior hunters in so many regions. This also meant that the Luminous Church's advanced hunter-level combat power would only increase. If we include the Saints, the power of the Mystic Sect is simply unfathomable. However, just the Demon Dragon clan alone has terrifying powerhouses like Meshali and the girl in the traditional Chinese dress. I'm afraid the hidden power of the Mystic Sect is even stronger. If we want to become the ruler of Sylvia, we still have to rely on our own strength. Instead of a group of pigs huddling together, we might as well become stronger. Dean's eyes lit up as he carefully looked at the information in his hand. His deified splitter had infinite potential. He had to improve his strength as soon as possible. In the huge office, the sound of pages flipping echoed in Dean's fingertips. The hourglass was slowly dripping. In the blink of an eye, more than 2 hours had passed. Elder, someone from the 3rd region has come to see you. Hawkeye respectfully reported to Dean. Dean was engrossed in reading the information. He frowned and pondered a little. Bring it in. Yes. Hawkeye turned and left. Dean's eyes narrowed as he gently rubbed his fingers. He's quite impatient. Hawkeye returned to the office. There were 2 people behind him. One was a middle-aged man wearing a gray cloak, and the other was a knight in black armor. Dean narrowed his eyes. He could see a fiery aura from the Black Knight's body. It was comparable to Gwyneth and the others. Greetings to the new elder. May I know your name? The middle-aged man wearing a gray cloak said in a respectful manner. Dean hadn't opened his mouth, but Hawkeye quickly said, "Our new elder is codenamed Devil." There was a trace of strange expression on the middle-aged man's face, but it disappeared without a trace. He respectfully smiled. "Greetings, Elder Devil. I've come under the order of my Master Night King to visit you. I've heard that you have just taken office, so I've sent you a small gift. I hope you don't mind." He opened the package in his hand and handed it to Dean. There was a square box that was cast in gold. It was extremely exquisite. Dean glanced at the box in case it was contaminated with poison. He signaled to Hawkeye. Dean was in the dark church now. There were some lawless and vicious people here, so he had to be careful. Hawkeye's eyes lit up as he quietly opened the box. There was a small green porcelain bottle inside the box. The bottle was extremely thin and transparent. Dean could vaguely see the red liquid flowing inside the bottle. It was extremely beautiful. The middle-aged man smiled. "Elder, this is a gift from my Master Night King. It's made from the brain of an earth dragon beast. It has an incredible restorative effect. It can regenerate broken limbs. As long as there is a breath left, it can be saved. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's a second life." There was a trace of shock in Dean's eyes. He had heard about the Fountain of Life in the temple. It was one of the most precious items in the temple. It was out of stock all year round. After all, dragon beasts were extremely rare outside the giant wall. Moreover, their hunting level was extremely high. Even a young dragon beast had a hunting level of around 20. A mature dragon beast had a hunting level of 35 to 40. As for a mature dragon beast, it was even more terrifying. It was a war beast. It was almost comparable to the legendary monster Splitter. Although Earth Dragon Beast didn't have magic marks, but the value of its body wasn't inferior to most of the named monsters. The Night King actually has something that can't be bought in the temple. Dean was shocked by the power of the Night King, but he quickly recovered. He knew the intention of the Night King. He wanted to use the gift to win over the Night King. Moreover, he had just taken office, and the other party had already sent him a gift. First, it showed that he had a huge intelligence network. Second, he had just taken office. Not to mention gaining a firm foothold, he hadn't even fully understood the situation in the 9th District. Naturally, he didn't have the confidence and courage to refuse him. He was silent for a moment. He put away the rejuvenation fountain. "I'll accept this gift. Thank the Night King for me." The middle-aged man smiled. "In that case, I'll take my leave." Dean nodded. "Hawkeye, see them off." Hawkeye enviously looked at the golden box in Dean's hand. He withdrew his eyes and sent the middle-aged man and the knight out. After the three left the room, Dean opened the box, picked up the green bottle, and looked at it gently. This small bottle was a valuable work of art. He looked at the light red color inside, and his eyes narrowed slightly. "Such a good thing. It's a pity to send it to my mouth." Dean's mouth curved into a smile as he put away the rejuvenation fountain. He continued to read the information at hand. He must fully understand the 9th region as soon as possible. Dark Church, 3rd region. Night King, he has accepted your gift. The middle-aged man in a gray cloak respectfully knelt on the ground. In this cold and gloomy hall, there was a throne that emitted an iron-like chill. Sitting on it was a figure wearing a black robe and a black hat. He said in an ancient voice, "You just said that the code name of this new elder is Demon King." "Yes, Night King. Well, this time the gift is too heavy." Chapter 464. The middle-aged man in the gray cloak was slightly startled. He carefully looked at the majestic figure shrouded in darkness on the throne above and said, "Lord Night Prince, although the spring of rejuvenation is expensive, it should not be too much of a loss to gain the allegiance of an elder, right? Naturally, it wouldn't be a loss if we can get his allegiance." The man on the throne indifferently said, "But this person claims to be the devil." "Oomph. The Holy Church calls us demons, so he calls himself the devil. How can such an ambitious person be willing to be subservient to others? He has just taken over the position of an elder, so his foundation is too weak to refuse." But if there is an opportunity in the future, he will be the king. The middle-aged man's complexion slightly changed. Lord Knight Prince, in that case, we might as well take the 9th region as our own before his wings harden. In this case, he can only be a lone commander if he wants to be the Demon King in the future. It's impossible, but we can't give the opportunity for the 9th region to grow. Otherwise, the balance between the 3 kings will be broken and the region will fall into chaos. The Night King said in a cold voice. Yes. The sky was bright. Dean was still in the office reading the information of the 9th region. He had a general understanding of the situation of the 9th region after one night of reading. The 9th region belonged to the lower middle level of the entire 12 regions of the Dark Church. Whether it was the number of followers, wealth, or force, the 9th region was far behind the other regions, especially the 3rd region, which was under the control of the Night King. The difference was like the clouds and the mud. I didn't expect that the gap between the 12 regions would be so big. I don't know if the Night King is appointed by the monastery to supervise the deacon. Dean thought in his heart. It doesn't matter if he has the same identity or not. According to the words of the elder of the punishment department, once exposed, he will either return to the inner wall or be sentenced to death. It doesn't matter what his identity is. In the future, he will be either a friend or an enemy. Elder, did you call me? Hawkeye pushed the door and came in. Dean nodded. Call all the 5-star alchemists, great potion masters, diviners, dark knights. I want to hold a meeting. Meeting? Hawkeye was startled, but he quickly understood and nodded. I will inform them. Dudian nodded and continued to read other information. These information also included the other 11 regions. They were the information collected by the previous elders. The 3 kings of the 12th region are the Night King of the 3rd region, the Sword King of the 1st region, and the Pluto King of the 5th region. The subordinates of the 3 kings are attached to other elders. In addition, the 2nd region, the 10th region, and the 12th region are not affiliated with the 3 kings. It seems that there should be a total of 4 factions. These 3 factions should take care of each other, but only to a certain extent. Dean's eyes flashed as he pondered. After a long while, Hawkeye came to report and said respectfully, Elder, the 2 5-star alchemists from Stuart and Corina have arrived. They are waiting for you in the conference hall. Dean frowned as he looked at the hourglass. Where are the others? Hawkeye bowed his head and said, still on the way. Are they usually this slow? Dean frowned. Hawkeye quietly looked at him. Elder, some of them are far away and some of them are busy. So it is inevitable that they will be slow. Dean noticed his eyes. His face turned cold. What's the slowest gathering time in the past? There was a trace of tension in Hawkeye's eyes. In the past, the slowest time was about 2.5 hours. All right, an hour has passed. Let's wait for another 1.5 hours. Dean waved. You go back and tell them to wait. Yes. Hawkeye hesitated, but eventually held back and left. 1.5 hours passed. Hawkeye knocked on the door. Come in. Hawkeye pushed the door and entered. He looked at Dean, who was sitting in front of the desk and reading the information. He bowed his head. Elder, time is up. Dean's eyes moved from the information about the regional divisions and the number of grassroots personnel in the 9th region. He looked at Hawkeye. Is everyone here? Hawkeye hesitated. Elder, there are 7 people who haven't arrived. 7? Dean's eyebrows rose. The total number of people in the meeting was 16, but at the moment, nearly half of them hadn't arrived. All right. Dean got up, write down the names of those who haven't arrived, and give them to me. Hawkeye said as he saw Dean's eyes. Elder, it's the first time you have taken over, so it's inevitable that they want to put on airs. The impact on the 9th region will be too great if they join other regions. I hope you won't be impulsive. Dean was about to pass by him. He stopped and said in an indifferent voice, Please remember one thing. In my territory, no one can put on airs with me. Hawkeye was stunned. Dean strode out of the room. Hawkeye turned around and followed Dudian. He stealthily looked at Dudian's eyes. He didn't see the anger in Dudian's eyes, but a pair of calm and deep eyes. Dean came to a spacious room on the left side of the 2nd floor. He saw 11 figures sitting in a room. 5 of them were exuding blazing heat. The remaining 6 were relatively dim, but slightly higher than the average person. However, there was something strange about their bodies. The heat distribution of their bodies was uneven. 2 of them had extremely hot arms, but the heat from their bodies was very dim. The other one had a red chest, but the heat from his limbs was average. "Elder, please." Hawkeye took the initiative to open the door and respectfully said to Dean. Dean entered the room. It was a very luxurious conference hall, decorated with resplendent gold and jade. Even the tables and chairs were made of expensive materials. The style was extraordinary. It seemed like they were made by master craftsmen. As soon as the door was opened, the laughter in the conference hall came to an abrupt end. Everyone turned their heads or raised their eyes to look at Dean, who was standing at the door. When they saw the mask on Dean's face, some people frowned. Dean wasn't nervous in front of everyone's gaze, although he knew that all of them were big shots of the Dark Church. But he wasn't a child like he was a few years ago. He had seen the masters of the temple and was able to calmly deal with these occasions. He came to the conference hall and looked around. "Hello, everyone. I'm the new elder. My code name is Devil. I called all of you here because I want to have a few words." "Devil?" There was a trace of astonishment in everyone's eyes as they heard the overbearing code name. Soon, an enchanting woman sitting on a nearby chair immediately said, "Codename Demon King? Elder, do you know that in the 12 regions of the Dark Church, besides the 3 kings, no one dares to use the word king as their codename? Aren't you being a bit too ostentatious? Wouldn't our 9th region become the target of public criticism if the 3 kings misunderstood?" "Yes, Elder, your code name is too provocative. Change it." 2 people at the side chimed in. Dean's eyes narrowed as he quietly waited for them to finish talking. He saw that no one else spoke. "Today is the first day of our meeting, and you want me to change my code name? Is this your welcome ceremony?" The 3 people's faces changed. The enchanting woman said, "Elder, you misunderstood us. We don't mean anything else. It's just that your code name is too ostentatious. Our 9th region is in the middle level of the 12th region. If you make the 3 kings unhappy, then the consequences will be unimaginable." Dean stared at her. He could roughly judge from her clothing that she was a great potion master. He smiled. "What will be unimaginable?" The enchanting woman's face turned ugly as she saw the thorns in his words. "Elder, I'm just being kind. I know." Dean interrupted her. The smile in his eyes instantly turned cold. He glanced at everyone. "Today, I called you over to talk about the future position and development of our 9th region. I only have one goal, and that is to be the strongest." As soon as he said that, the conference room immediately fell silent. Everyone was stunned as they looked at Dean. "The strongest?" A middle-aged man next to him smiled. "Elder, you have just taken office. You may not know much about the situation here. Our 9th region, I understand." Dean interrupted him. "I have seen the situation of the 9th region. I also know the information about the 3 kings. There is no way for us to compete with the 3 kings with our current ability, but we can develop and catch up with them. Don't tell me that you want to see the faces of the 3 kings. Do you want to swallow your anger when the resources are plundered?" Hearing his words, everyone looked at each other. Based on the last sentence, they knew that Dean had done his homework. "Of course we want to, but it's extremely difficult to catch up to the 3 kings. With the resources and connections in our hands, even if they stagnate, it'll still take us 10 years to catch up," another elder said helplessly to the side. "Yes." The enchanting woman nodded and looked at Dean. "Elder, since you have said so, what is your plan?" "It is better to talk less, so as to avoid the anger of the 3 kings. Our 9th region can't afford it." Dean indifferently said, "The plan is very simple. Improve the curriculum of the academy and vigorously cultivate new 5-star alchemists and great potion masters. At the same time, train more dark knights." Hearing this, the enchanting woman was stunned, and she only reacted after a while. Her eyes widened as she said, "Elder, you're joking?" Dean seriously said, "Am I not?" The enchanting woman didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Of course you are right. But the problem is that it takes more than a few years to cultivate a new 5-star alchemist or a great potion master or even a great diviner. Even if we're lucky enough to meet some talented students, it will take 7 or 8 years for them to have some achievements. If we want to cultivate new 5-star alchemists, then it will be good if we can produce 2 in 10 years. Don't think that it is too difficult. Dean indifferently said, I have my own way. Today I called you here to tell you that I hope you will seriously carry out the tasks that I will give you in the future. If the task fails due to personal reasons, then the consequences will not be what you want to see. Humph. A middle-aged man wearing a black cloak sitting at the end of the conference table slightly raised his eyes. His rough face was full of ridicule as he coldly looked at Dean. Ignorant. I really don't know why the higher-ups would appoint a person like you as an elder. It is ridiculous. What kind of profession do you think alchemists and potion masters are? Do you think that as long as they have God's blessing, everyone can become a dark knight? Ignorant. Dean's eyes narrowed as he quietly looked at him. What? Are you not convinced? The middle-aged man's eyes were full of cold arrogance as he looked directly at Dean. Dean knew where the man's confidence came from. As a dark knight, he was absolutely a high-level figure in his region. Even the elders had to be polite to him. Otherwise, he could defect to other regions at any time. Although it would have a certain impact on his reputation, and it would be difficult to defect a second time, but after all, there was room for freedom of choice. Moreover, his own strength and influence, as well as the dark knights that he commanded, would make it difficult for the elders to arrest him. This was the reason why a dark knight was so awesome. Is there anything else you want to say? Dean asked. The middle-aged man coldly snorted. I came here today to give you some face. I didn't expect that the new leader would be a good-for-nothing. His feet haven't even stabilized yet, and he dares to challenge the 3 kings. If I knew it would be like this, I might as well sleep at home and waste my time. Dean was still quietly looking at him. The middle-aged man's face turned ugly as he saw that Dean didn't speak. His eyes became more gloomy. What? Don't you have anything to say? Since you have finished, I will say it. Dean slowly said, You just said that it is very difficult to train alchemists and dark knights. Indeed, it is very difficult for you. Otherwise, the 9th region wouldn't be in the middle or lower position for so many years. But from today onwards, the 9th region will be under my control. You only need to do the tasks that I give you, and in half a year, the 9th region will become one of the top 5 regions, and I will become the new king. I'll leave my words here. You can choose not to believe me, but regardless of whether you believe me or not, I'll only say this once. If anyone fails to complete the mission I've given them due to personal reasons or colludes with other districts, I won't let them off lightly. Everyone was surprised, including the enchanting woman and the middle-aged man. They didn't expect Dean's tone to be so big. Middle-aged man frowned. There was some dissatisfaction in his heart, but as he saw Dean's confident look, he held back the sarcasm in his heart. After all, half a year would pass quickly. If the newly appointed elder didn't have a little bit of confidence, then there was no reason for him to say such big words. If he broke his promise to everyone, then his prestige as an elder would be lost. The middle-aged man believed that Dean was aware of the consequences. No matter what, he was sent by the higher-ups to be an elder. He should have the brains to think about it. Elder, do you have any plans? The old man next to him asked curiously. Dean replied, Of course. Elder, we will believe you for the time being. The enchanting woman glanced at the crowd and said to Dean. There wasn't the slightest joy in Dean's eyes. He turned to look at Hawkeye. Have you written the list of people who didn't come? Yes. Hawkeye respectfully handed over the list. Chapter 465. Hawkeye was stunned. Cancel all their positions? The people in the conference hall, who were whispering to each other, turned to look at Dean in shock. Dean raised his eyebrows. Didn't you hear it? Hawkeye was shocked. He finally knew that he wasn't hallucinating. He hurriedly said, Elder, they are all counselors of the 9th district. I'm afraid. Dean indifferently said. You have misunderstood. I'm talking about canceling all their positions, including their glorious titles. It doesn't matter if they were 5-star alchemists, potions masters, or dark knights. If they want to regain their position, they have to reapply for the exam. Hawkeye was dumbfounded as he looked at Dean. The people around him were dumbfounded. After a while, the middle-aged man from before was the first to react. He slammed his thick, callous palm on the table and stood up angrily. Are you kidding me? They didn't have time to attend today's meeting because they had something to do, and you want to revoke their positions? Do you know what you're doing? You're canceling their identities. Do you want to destroy the ninth region? Dean's eyes narrowed. He turned to look at him. First of all, don't make me feel like you are making noise when you talk to me. I will forgive you this time, but don't do it again. Don't do it again. Second of all, the previous elder Carrie has retired and the new elder has come. Carrie should have informed you about this and completed the handover work. In that case, they should know how to use today's time. Moreover, even if they have something to do, they should at least send someone to apologize and record the contents of the meeting. But they didn't. Middle-aged man angrily said, I don't care what the reason is. You can't cancel their positions even if they didn't come. It's tantamount to forcing them to betray the ninth region. You are digging your own grave. Dean shook his head and waved to him. Come here. The middle-aged man's face was full of anger as he strode in front of Dean. What do you want? Look at this. Dean raised his right hand and slowly clenched his fist. When the middle-aged man heard his words, his gaze subconsciously fell on his right fist and his face sank. Just as he was about to speak, his vision suddenly blurred, and he was shocked in his heart. He instinctively raised his hand to block, but his speed was a beat too slow, and it wasn't just a beat. Bang! A sharp pain suddenly blossomed in his abdomen. His body curled up like a shrimp, and his feet were lightly lifted off the ground. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His body slowly floated down like a light snowflake. The sharp pain spread throughout his body like a cramp. He covered his abdomen and couldn't muster any strength in his body. It was as if all his bones had dispersed, and it was difficult for him to even stand. Dean didn't know when he put away his fist. He took out a white handkerchief and gently wiped the dirt on the back of his hand. He threw the handkerchief on the man's body. Don't think that you can be unscrupulous because you are a dark knight. Carrie needs your protection, but I don't. This is the first time, but the second time it won't be as simple as pain. The conference hall was silent. Everyone's eyes almost protruded out as they looked at the scene in shock. Middle-aged man tightly pressed the table to support his body and didn't fall down. He clenched his teeth to restrain himself from screaming, but his head was full of sweat. After a little while, the pain was slightly alleviated. He reluctantly looked up at Dean. There was a trace of anger and fear in his eyes. He knew that if Dean had a dagger in his hand, then he would have fallen at the moment. Everyone here is a smart person, so you are well aware of the situation. Dean faintly smiled. Don't tell me that the 6 of them didn't come. Their purpose is nothing more than to give me, the new elder, some color to see. Unfortunately, I don't like the color of arrogance. In my territory, you have to abide by my rules. Whoever doesn't abide by them will be kicked out by me. Everyone's face changed. They were barely able to maintain their calmness, but their eyes were full of surprise. Obviously, no one thought that the newly appointed elder would be so strong. Moreover, the strength that he had shown had shocked everyone. Some even suspected that the middle-aged man was bribed by Dean in advance. Maybe he had colluded with Dean to put on this play. While I'm in charge of the 9th District, if anyone betrays me and defers to another elder with their resources and intelligence, believe me, I will use all the power of the 9th District to kill them. Dean's eyes were cold as he glanced at everyone. He didn't pay any attention to them as he left the conference room. Hawkeye was stunned for a few seconds, but quickly followed him. The cold and tense atmosphere in the conference room relaxed after Dean left. Everyone felt that the pressure brought by the new elder was far stronger than that of the previous elder. Tom, are you okay? The enchanting woman asked. The middle-aged man, who was leaning on the table, took a deep breath. The pain in his abdomen had gradually reached a bearable level. He reached out his hand and said, I'm fine. At the same time, he looked outside the conference room in the direction of Dean's departure. A trace of deep fear flashed in the depths of his eyes. No matter how much strength was used to hit the abdomen, it was impossible to cause such a strong pain. Unless a special method was used to hit a special meridian, it would cause such a lasting and severe pain. This alone was enough to show that the latter's strength was better than his. However, the number of people in the entire outer wall who could easily defeat him wouldn't be more than 2 hands. I didn't expect that our new elder would be a strong fighter. An old man with a sharp beard had a gloomy expression on his face. There was a slanted scar on his face, which made his gloomy face look even more ferocious. He deliberately reminded Tomac to watch his fist, but he still defeated him easily. His purpose is to intimidate us. The power he showed is probably comparable to the Archangel of the luminous Vatican. When did such a monster appear in the Dark Church? How come we haven't heard any news about him? It's really strange. Another old man frowned. The enchanting woman stroked her cheek with a strand of hair in her hand and said softly, "Every time an elder is appointed by the higher-ups, every elder has an amazing background and strength. In my opinion, this elder of ours is not simple at all. He dared to give himself the codename Demon King as soon as he took office. This is definitely not a spur-of-the-moment decision, but a deliberate show for the 3 kings. Since he has the guts to provoke the 3 kings, he most likely has a foundation that we don't know about. Yes, under his leadership, the 9th district might really become one of the top 5 districts in half a year. If I have enough resources, my alchemy warlocks may be able to go a step further and produce the Stone of Eternity. Humph, don't be happy too early. It's just strength. In the Dark Church, strength is the least valuable thing. Don't be too blind." Hawkeye followed Dean back to his office. "Elder, do you really want to directly dismiss these 6 people? There are 2 5-star alchemists, 2 knight commanders, 1 great knight, and 1 great potion master. If we directly cancel their honor and position, then the implications will be too big. Some of them are from aristocratic families, and some of them are backed by nobles. If they leave the 9th region, then the nobles behind them will withdraw their investment. The loss would be too great." Dean snorted. "I'll use 100% of my strength to suppress them. The subordinates should obey the superiors. This is the basic principle of the system. It's not about the superiors trying to please the subordinates." Hawkeye bitterly smiled and said, "But although we can suppress them in this way, it's not worth it. We still have softer means. Violence is the most effective method." Dean waved his hand, "Go out." Hawkeye was speechless. He turned and left. The inner wall. The monastery. Interesting. Did he really say that? There was a faint smile on the elder's face. Become one of the top 5 regions in half a year. Huh. It seems that he is tactful and didn't say that he would be first. A ghost-like shadow whispered, "Isn't he too high profile? Should we go and remind him?" "No need." The elder shook his head slightly. "He's been low-key enough. Otherwise, with his strength, it would be easy for him to make the 9th region the strongest region in half a year. He knows that we are watching him, so he didn't rush for quick success. Moreover, he declared himself as the king, opposing all the other camps. This is to tell us that he will follow our orders and do his job well. He will make trouble for the other camps. That's enough." The corner of the elder's mouth twitched. He had declared himself as the king and dismissed 6 high-level members of his own region. Was this low-key? "You can go back." The elder smiled. "The outer wall will be very lively in the next 6 months. I hope that he can keep it up. If he is sincere, then it won't be a problem to let him be the next pope." "Pope?" Shadow's pupil shrank as he bowed his head. It seemed that he didn't hear anything. "This subordinate will retire." His figure disappeared from the office. The elder looked at the door that was opened and closed. There was a smile on his face. Chapter 466. What? I was removed from all my positions? In a noble castle with an extraordinary style, in an empty room with cold light, the fair-skinned and slender Angelia looked at her confidant in front of her in disbelief. Her mature face was full of shock. "Your Excellency, the news is true." The young man who was half kneeling on the ground bowed his head and said, "In addition to you, the other 5 counselors who didn't go to the meeting were also ruled to be deprived of their counselor status and all their positions, including their original identity. They must pass the professional examination again before they can be awarded a new medal." The headquarters has sent someone to collect your 5-star alchemist badge, and they are still on the way. Others were also removed. The shock on Angelia's face deepened. Was the new elder trying to force all of them to rebel by removing 6 counselors and depriving them of their identities? She took a deep breath and looked at the youth. Tell me the details. What is the identity of the new elder? He dares to be so arrogant. The young man lowered his head and said, the new elder's code name is Demon King, and his origin is unknown. According to the news, he defeated the leader of the Dark Knights, Tomark, with 1 punch during this meeting, showing his extraordinary power. Although some people speculated that he might be colluding with Tomark to put on a show, the other 5 people who were dismissed this time include the leader of the Knights, Kpose, and Grand Knight Limon. They are Tomark's close friends and students, so the possibility of Tomark acting is not high. Self-proclaimed Demon King, he defeated Tamaka with 1 punch. Angelia's pupils contracted. She took a deep breath and said, is he going to go against the 3 kings the moment he steps onto stage? He could defeat Tamaka with 1 punch. His physique should have reached the limitless level. He should have a lot of connections in the inner wall. Otherwise, it's impossible to reach the limitless level by relying on God's blessing. The youth bowed his head and didn't speak. The shock on Angelia's face gradually calmed down. She rolled her eyes and pondered. Every elder has been carefully selected by the higher-ups. Since this person has such confidence, he must have a pretty good trump card. Thinking of this, the anger in her heart dissipated, and she said to the young man, prepare a generous gift immediately. I'm going to the headquarters personally. The youth was startled. He didn't expect such an arrogant person to bow her head. Yes. You want to take back my grand potion apothecary medal? Is he crazy? In a room of a luxurious castle, Amy, who was as lively and beautiful as a 16 or 17-year-old girl, stared at her trusted maid in disbelief. Soon, the shock in her eyes turned into anger and resentment. She clenched her white and tender fingers tightly and said through gritted teeth, what's so great about defeating Tamaka? No one can resist my magic potion. Hearing her words, the maid lowered her head and said respectfully, you're right. Even if he's a god, he can't resist the erosion of your magic potion. That's right. Amy coldly snorted, her eyes flashing with hatred. I wanted to teach him a lesson, but he actually dared to directly revoke my position as a councilman and my identity. Humph. Does he really think that we have nowhere else to go besides the 9th region? Since you want to force me, I'll use your head as a prize and present it to Lord Hellking. The trusted maid said respectfully, with my lord's talent and attainments in potions, you will definitely be recognized by His Majesty Pluto. Of course. If it weren't for Carrie, I would have gone long ago, Amy snorted coldly. The news spread like wildfire after the end of the meeting. At the same time, Dean received Hawkeye's report in the headquarters. Elder, Sword King, and Pluto have sent you a gift. They're waiting outside. Dean was reading the information in his hand. It wasn't the information of the 9th region, but some confidential files that he could read as an elder of the Dark Church. He had finished reading the information of the 9th region and other regions last night. He was too lazy to look up as he heard Hawkeye's report. Ask them what the gift is. If it isn't expensive, then directly call them. Hawkeye smiled bitterly. He had seen the reality and straightforwardness of a new elder. Senior hunters are at the bottleneck. They use some potions to stimulate the body and exert the power of the limitless. God's blessings are limited to hunters. Moreover, the God's marrow, which is used by the limitless, doesn't flow into the outer wall and can only be bought in the inner wall. Dean frowned as he read through the files. His original plan was to rely on God's blessing to improve his physique to the peak as soon as possible. But now it seemed that it wasn't realistic. It was no wonder that it was difficult to meet saints in the outer wall. The inner wall controlled most of the resources and held the key to the supreme level. It was because of this monopoly that the inner wall could easily suppress the outer wall and even enslave the outer wall. It seems that I have to find a channel to get the God's marrow from the inner wall if I want to improve my strength. Dean's eyes lit up. It was easy to be detected by the monastery, if he relied on the channel of the dark church. He had to use other methods. But there was a side wall in the inner wall. There was only one way to enter the inner wall. That was the supply team of the Monster Research Institute in the inner wall that provided the blessings of God to the outer wall. Let's try from the supply team. If it doesn't work, then I have to use the old method of sneaking over the wall. Dean thought. Hawkeye came back. Elder, they gave us whirling stone and beauty wine. The whirling stone is an alchemy item. It is very rare and very difficult to refine. Only 5-star alchemists have a very small chance to extract it. It has a very high collection value and is loved by the nobles. It can be used to make friends with the nobles. The beauty wine is one of the most famous treasures in the hands of the Nether King. It is a top-notch potion created by the great potion apothecary Suber. Just a drop of it mixed in the well water can easily poison tens of thousands of people to death. If it is consumed directly, it will immediately cause death. The only drawback is that it has the fragrance of red wine. Dean replied, "It is a third-rate thing. Return it. You can buy beauty wine outside. Go back and buy some and let our great potion master analyze it. Let's see if he can figure out the formula." Chapter 467. All right, Dudian casually said, "Pick a few outstanding potion masters and set up a research group. Give them the rest of the beauty wine. I'll write down the analytical formula and give it to them. Let them follow the formula." Analytical formula? Hawkeye was surprised. "Do you understand potions?" Dudian waved his hand as he didn't want to waste time with him. Hawkeye responded and turned back. Dudian took out a piece of paper and wrote down the distillation method and chromatography method. He threw it to the side. He didn't intend to delve into the field of poison analysis. In fact, he didn't even think about how to run the 9th region. The 12 districts of the Dark Church, no matter which district, in the end, is just a chess piece in the hands of the monastery. Moreover, it's just a stepping stone for the Holy Church. No matter how good one's performance is, they can only be called the king on the chessboard. Their whole life is controlled by others. If they immerse themselves in it and enjoy it, that's the greatest tragedy and stupidity. If you want to get rid of the control, then you have to cut off the player's fingers. Dujian's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. The monastery made him return to the outer wall. It would be the most regretful thing for the monastery in the future. This time he would make good use of the resources and time in his hands. He would build enough strength to compete with the inner wall before the next crisis came. This power didn't come from the Dark Church nor the Holy Church. Even if he used the entire power of the outer wall, they wouldn't be able to compete with the inner wall. He had to use the power outside of the chessboard to overturn the chessboard. He called Hawkeye, who was outside. "Elder." Hawkeye held the list of potion masters in his hand as he looked at Dudian. He didn't know what the new elder wanted him to do. Hawkeye had a little fear in his heart. The new master had a completely different style from Carrie. One was arrogant while the other was low-key and cautious. Dudian asked, "How many God's blessings do we have in the warehouse?" Hawkeye didn't understand. "I haven't counted it recently. But the last time I counted, it was enough to upgrade 7 intermediate knights to grand knights." "What do you mean?" "I want all of them." Dean glanced at him. "Don't end your sentence with a question." Hawkeye's heart jumped, bowed his head, and said, "Yes. Go. Bring it to me as soon as possible." Dean said, "In addition, if there is a sale on the market, buy it. Don't worry about money. Tell me when there is a shortage." "Yes." Hawkeye nodded, but he was secretly surprised. He knew that the new elder was ready to make a big move. He did not dare to neglect and quickly left. Not long after, Hawkeye returned to the headquarters. Several dark knights brought huge black boxes to Dean's room. Hawkeye respectfully said, "Sir, these are the blessings of God in the warehouse. There are also some left for the basic daily mission expenses of the 9th District. Do you want me to take them for you?" "Not for now." Dean got up and opened a black box. It was full of old-fashioned syringes. The syringes were filled with a pink liquid, like diluted blood. It was God's blessing. Hawkeye looked at Dean's expression. He waved to the Dark Knights who were responsible for the transportation and signaled them to leave. Hawkeye carefully looked at Dean after all the people left. "Elder, is there anything else you want me to do?" "No, you can go out." Dean squatted down and gently stroked the old-fashioned syringes. Hawkeye looked at him and left the room. He closed the door and saw Dean put back a syringe of God's blessing into the box. Click. The door was closed. Dean picked up a syringe of God's blessing and rolled up the sleeve of his right arm. He pondered for a moment before inserting the syringe into his blood vessels and slowly injecting it into his body. He had learned the knowledge of the old era, so he knew about the serious consequences of blood-type conflict. He knew about the abnormal changes caused by the genetic conflict. He felt a chill when he first saw the so-called God's blessing when he was a scavenger. He always felt that this thing was extremely imperfect. Moreover, it was hiding something terrible or a conspiracy. He couldn't believe that the giant wall world could solve the problem that couldn't be solved in the old era. However, with the passing of the years, as well as the years of contact and understanding, he knew that absorbing the blessings of God was the only way to become stronger, even if the ultimate price was destruction. Previously, he had the magic marks of the infected, so he could take a shortcut and directly absorb the cold crystals to enhance his strength. But the price was the loss of feeling in his left hand. Now that he didn't have the magic marks of the infected, he could only rely on the God's blessing created by the Monster Research Institute. I don't know what kind of secret is hidden in the Monster Research Institute. Dean secretly thought as he injected the syringe of God's blessing into his arm. Very soon, a tube of God's blessing was injected into his arm. He felt that his arm was a little cold, as if a stream of ice had entered his body. However, the cold soon turned into a burning sensation, as if something was being torn apart. This blazing heat appeared very quickly and disappeared just as quickly. In the blink of an eye, everything returned to normal. Dean looked at the needle hole in his arm and continued to inject the second syringe of God's blessing. With his current physique, he could still feel the burning sensation after absorbing God's blessing, which meant that it was still effective. From the evolution point of view, he had just been promoted to senior hunter level, so the God's blessing could still satisfy the desire of the cells. Soon the second syringe of God's blessing was injected into his arm, and the burning sensation appeared again. Dean didn't stop, but continued to absorb until he injected 18 syringe of God's blessing. In addition to the burning sensation, there was a slight swelling pain in his arm. He immediately stopped the absorption. According to the instructions of God's blessing, this was a sign of short-term saturation. If he continued to inject the syringe of God's blessing, it would cause the capillaries to rupture. If he continued to inject the syringe of God's blessing, then it would cause internal bleeding and damage to the important organs. I can absorb about 20 syringe of God's blessing at a time. Dean felt that his strength had obviously increased a lot, but compared to his overall strength, it was very weak. A normal senior hunter needed to absorb tens of thousands of syringe of God's blessing to reach the limit of senior hunter. It'll take a few hours for me to continue to absorb. On average, I can absorb 3 syringe of God's blessing a day. According to the calculation of 18 syringe of God's blessing each time, it will take about 5 months to absorb tens of thousands of syringe of God's blessing. Dean's eyes flashed as he calculated in his mind. His physique would reach the limit of senior hunter level in half a year. At that time, he would be able to show the strength of the splitter magic marks, which would be further enhanced. At least he would be able to surpass Francis, who was the captain of the Saints. This kind of speed of improvement was considered slow for him, but this was the normal efficiency of the people in the outer wall and even the inner wall. Even if there was a continuous supply of resources, it was impossible to become fat in one bite. Otherwise, it would be too terrifying. Any big consortium or family could hoard enough resources and create more than a dozen strong people in an instant. The battle would be completely chaotic. Dean's eyes fell on the syringe of God's blessing in the box. He picked one up and carefully observed it. Cold crystal can also enhance the physique. Although the sequelae are serious, but it proves that cold crystal does have a physical enhancement component. God's blessing should be extracted from the syringe of God's blessing. But the characteristic of cold crystal is that it absorbs heat and turns into ice. I don't know what the pink substance is and where it came from. Aisha said that she was able to climb over the wall of size when she was 8 or 9 years old. So the Dragon Clan should have a special method to improve people's strength quickly. Otherwise, it would be impossible for a newborn child to inject God's blessing every day. Moreover, a baby can only withstand one syringe of God's blessing at the age of 8 or 9. It's impossible for her to climb over the wall of size by relying on God's blessing alone, unless she has wings like me. But it doesn't look like she is hiding her wings. Devil family, Dean's eyes flashed. There was a trace of unwillingness in his heart. He would be able to speed up his growth if he could get the secrets of the Monster Research Institute or the Devil family. However, there was the Psi Wall. Even if he could sneak into the inner wall, it would be difficult to sneak into the Monster Research Institute and steal their secrets, not to mention sneaking into the Devil family. Chapter 468. Elder, 5-star alchemist Angelia has come to see you. Hawkeye's voice echoed from outside the room. Dean returned to his seat. Let her in. The door was pushed open after a moment. Hawkeye led Angelia into the room. Angelia was wearing a black dress and white cotton gloves. Dean didn't raise his head to see the appearance of the 5-star alchemist. What made him slightly raise his eyebrows was that the information showed that this woman was over 60 years old. But looking at her appearance, there was no shadow of a 60-year-old woman. She was a mature and beautiful young lady. However, thinking of her identity as a life alchemist, Dean was surprised. He looked up at her. If it wasn't necessary, he didn't want to expose any of his abilities. Even if it wasn't a full-range view, he didn't want to expose any of his abilities. Greetings, Elder. Angelia bowed her head and smiled. Her eyes inadvertently glanced at Dean. She quietly remembered his appearance. Her heart was full of surprise. She could feel that the new elder didn't seem to be old. His body exuded a strong vitality. Dean wore a mask. His eyes were indifferent. I accept your apology. You can go back. Everything will be fine as long as you follow the rules. Angelica didn't expect Dean to be so direct. She responded with an elegant smile. Elder, you are really a straightforward person. I didn't attend the meeting today because I was delayed by something. I hope Elder can forgive me. This is a small gift that I have prepared for you. I hope Elder won't reject it. She handed over a delicate gift box and put it on Dean's table. Dean glanced at it but didn't touch it. All right, you can go back. Angelia's eyes turned. Elder, I heard that you want to make the 9th region one of the top 5 regions in 6 months. Do you have any objections? Dean looked at her. Angelia replied, No, I just admire Elder's courage. If there is anything I can do for you in the future. Dean waved his hand, too lazy to be polite. Angelia smiled awkwardly and left. Hawkeye looked at Dean after sending off Angelia. Elder, Angelia has come to apologize. Shouldn't she be reinstated? Dean glanced at him. Will I be forgiven if I apologize? The only function of an apology is to highlight the existence of forgiveness, and in my case, forgiveness has never appeared. Hawkeye's face slightly changed as he bowed his head. Sir, this subordinate knows his mistake. Go ahead. Dean waved his hand. Hawkeye bowed his head and left the room. Time flew by. 2 more people came after Angelique. One was a dark knight, and the other was a grand knight. They came to apologize and beg Dean to restore their positions. However, Dean refused and asked them to retake the exam. In reality, retaking the exam wasn't difficult. What was difficult was that they couldn't regain their lost face. Not long after the 2 left, another person came. 09, small, say, net. Amy greets the elder. Amy stood in front of Dean's desk with a smile on her face. Her body was full of vitality. Dean's eyes were dull as he didn't look at her delicate and peerless cheeks. According to the information, the woman was older than Angelia. She was in her 70s. She had taken some potions and used life alchemy to maintain her figure and appearance. However, it was only the appearance. The lifespan that the life alchemist could bring was limited. Speak. Dean went straight to the point. Amy gently looked at Dean and smiled as she took out a porcelain bottle from her sleeve. This is my latest development. Ordinary people will be as strong as a bull after using it. Moreover, they won't feel pain. I'm going to give the formula to the headquarters. She handed the porcelain bottle to Dean. Dean looked at the porcelain bottle and was about to reach out to take it. However, he saw that Amy's eyes flashed as he looked at the porcelain bottle. There seemed to be a trace of joy in her eyes. He lowered his arm, squinted his eyes, and looked straight at the young woman who looked like a great potion master. Amy was surprised. She didn't expect Dean to suddenly stop her plan. She looked at Dean's eyes, and her heart skipped a beat. But the experience brought by the years had already made her calm. She smiled and said, "Elder, why do you look at me like that?" Her cheeks flushed as she said. She was as shy as a girl who fell in love for the first time. Dean resisted the urge to vomit as he looked at Hawkeye. "You can have it. I don't need it." Hawkeye had been following Carrie for a long time, so he had learned how to read people's expressions. He felt a trace of subtlety from Dean and Amy's expressions. "Thank you, Elder." As he spoke, he stepped forward to receive it, but as he did so, he took out a handkerchief from his bosom and wrapped it around his hand, saying, "It would be bad if such a precious thing got dirty." Amy's heart sank as she put away the small porcelain bottle. "I'll give you another one if you don't like it." Dean felt that his guess was confirmed. His eyes flashed, and he said in a cold voice, "Since you have given it out, how can you take it back? Hand it over." Amy's face changed as she bit her lower lip. "Elder, how can you bully me like this?" Dean's eyes were indifferent. He didn't soften because of her charming expression. "Do you want to keep the bottle or your hand?" "You." Amy's face turned ugly. It was obvious that Dean had seen through her thoughts, but she didn't know how he knew. She was angry and scared. "Elder, you can't do this to me. I just didn't come today. Hawkeye, take her down." Dean shouted. Hawkeye's mouth was bitter. He didn't want to provoke a potion master. She was definitely a viper. But because of Dean's order, he could only bite the bullet. "Master Amy, hand over the thing." Amy gritted her teeth. "Try and touch me." Hawkeye smiled bitterly. "I have long heard that your whole body is poisonous. Every thread of your dress is made of silk mixed with spider silk and soaked in venom. I don't have the antidote, so how could I dare to touch you? It's good that you know." Amy's face was gloomy. "Why are you doing this to me?" Dean indifferently said, "Are you still holding on to the last glimmer of hope? You want to poison me to death and seek refuge with a new master? You want to take my head to claim credit? I'll give you one last chance. Tell me your value, and maybe I'll let you live." Amy's face changed as she heard Dean say "old life." She was so angry that her face was distorted. She clenched the porcelain bottle tightly. "You damn bastard. You are lucky that you didn't fall into my trap. If I had known earlier, I would have directly pounced on you and let you have a taste of the rotten intestines poison. Do you dare to kill me? You won't shed a tear until you see the coffin." Dean sneered, grabbed a pencil from the table, and threw it at him. With a thud, the pencil suddenly hit Amy's hand that was holding the porcelain bottle, piercing through her wrist. Amy screamed in pain, and the porcelain bottle in her hand fell to the ground. It shattered with a bang, and the inside was filled with powder. She hugged her hand and screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Her voice was loud and ear-piercing. It seems that no matter how beautiful a person is, their screams are equally unpleasant. Dean said to Hawkeye. Hawkeye was stunned and smiled. Chapter 469. Big Secret. There was no anger in Dean's voice. He took out a sharpened pencil and gently played with it. "I don't like to listen to lies. It's equivalent to wasting my time." Amy clenched her teeth as she endured the pain in her wrist. There was a trace of hatred in her eyes as she said, "I know that one of the bishops in the Holy Church is a member of the Dark Church. Moreover, his position here is not low. If we expose his identity to the Holy Church, then the Holy Church will definitely investigate us. This will make the Holy Church lose a general, and the other regions lose a chess piece." She stared at Dean. There was a pitiful look on her face, but there was sincerity. Dean shook his head. He wasn't interested in such news after coming into contact with the monastery. Not to mention the problem of a bishop. The old pontiff was the supreme speaker of the dark church. Such news was useless to him. The old pontiff should know the identity of the bishop better than anyone else. He didn't pick out the bishop. Most of the time, it would be used as a negative example. He would let the bishop play its value at the right time. All the small movements were under the watch of the old pope. He was also under the watch of the monastery. The only pitiful thing was that the believers were loyal to their faith in the dark church. They were fighting each other for their God. They didn't know that the God they believed in was just an illusion written by the missionaries of the monastery to enslave them. Is this it? Dean twirled the pencil, cold light flowing on his fingertips. Amy was startled. She had been staring at Dean's eyes, but found that when she said the shocking news, the latter did not respond at all. Even his eyes flashed with a trace of disappointment. She asked, "Elder, do you know about this news?" Dean glanced at her. There is no way to distinguish whether the news is true or false. If my guess is right, then the bishop is not the elder you want to rely on. The next step will be for you to give out the district he is from. I will think that I have the evidence of the elder and negotiate with him. It will be best if there is a conflict so that you can rely on the new elder. You can also retaliate against me, right? Amy's expression changed slightly as she hastily said, "How could that be? Elder, you're thinking too much. This news is absolutely true. I have conclusive evidence. Let's talk about something else." The pencil in Dean's hand gently tapped on the table. Amy's words came to an abrupt end. Amy's expression changed for a moment before she said, "Elder, if you punish me, then our 9th region will lose a great potion apothecary. There aren't many potion apothecaries in the 9th region. You just take an office, and everyone is eyeing you covetously. You can't weaken yourself like this. I can make up for my mistake by developing a great potion apothecary within a month. I'll also sell the formula to you at the lowest price. It seems that you don't know me. I only want everything." Dean waved to Hawkeye. She attacked an elder. "Take her to prison and configure a set of tools for a great potion master. Let her study in prison." Hawkeye was stunned as he looked at Dean. He didn't expect Dean to be so ruthless. Amy's eyes widened. "You want to imprison me? You have no right to do so. Do you know my relationship? You want to imprison me for such a small matter." "No, right?" Dudian indifferently said, "I'm sorry. The 9th region used to have a parliamentary system, but from now on, it will be my dictatorship. I know your relationship with several families and consortiums. You have committed a crime. I want to see if they dare to yell at me because of you. You are just a great potion master. Don't think too highly of yourself." Amy's face was pale as her body trembled. She stared at Dean. "You can't do this to me. I can promise you other things, but you can't imprison me. You can't limit my freedom. If I am imprisoned, the production of potions in the 9th district will be greatly reduced. My students will also go on strike. My Amy Potion Union will also stop supplying you. At that time, the influence of the 9th district will decline again and become the worst among all the districts." Dean indifferently said, "We are all a group of cold-blooded monsters. Do you really think that your students will fight against me because of your imprisonment? Even though I don't understand the situation, I'm sure that some of your students have been hoping for your death for a long time. Only when you're dead can they have a chance to make a name for themselves. No one likes to be suppressed by others. I just need to give them a little more sweetness. Do you think they'll just disband and fight to the death against the church?" Amy's eyes were slightly red, and her lips slightly trembled. Dean's words were like a sharp sword that pierced into the depths of her heart. Of course, she knew that most of her students would not do such a thing for her, except for a few. The so-called teacher-student relationship was as fragile as a piece of paper in front of a behemoth like Dean. However, she didn't expect Dean to be so crazy and overbearing. He dared to be so tough as soon as he took office. "You will definitely suffer losses if you imprison me." Amy took a deep breath and gritted her teeth. "You want to restrict my freedom? I would rather die than make potions for you." Dean gently tapped the pen on the table. His words were as steady as his rhythm. "Don't say that you would rather die. Death is not so terrible. Barely surviving is the most painful thing. I advise you to be obedient. Otherwise, Your delicate face will soon be gone. What do you think about sewing a mummy's face on your face? Amy's pupils dilated. Her chest violently heaved up and down. Her face was as white as paper. She trembled. No, no, don't do that. It seems pretty good to sew an ugly male mummy's face on it. Dean was interested. I don't know how I would feel when I look in the mirror with an ugly face that exudes the stench of a rotten corpse. Amy's body trembled. She seemed to have completely forgotten the pain in her wrist. I promise you. I promise you. Too late. Dean shrugged his shoulders. I've thought about it. You don't have to regret it. I'll replace you when I'm satisfied with your performance. Then he said to Hawkeye next to him, I'll leave this matter to you. Also prepare 2 big mirrors so that our great potion master can admire himself. Hawkeye's scalp tingled. He had been in office for so many years, but he had never heard of such a brutal torture, especially for a girl who loved beauty. It was more terrible than death. He swallowed his saliva. I know. He didn't dare to persuade Dean again, although they had just met for a short time, but the impression in his mind was that the new elder was a brutal devil. Moreover, he was crazier than all the other devils. No, no. Amy screamed in horror. She saw that Dean was serious. I beg you. I am willing to do anything. Don't do this to me. I beg you. You have to pay the price for doing something wrong. Dudian indifferently said, Since you think that poisoning me is a trivial matter, then this matter is not worth mentioning. You better give up struggling. You won't be able to escape today. You won't be able to escape from here. You won't be able to escape even if you have wings. By the way, this idea came from a madman I met many years ago. You should thank him. No, Amy screamed. Dean glanced at Hawkeye. Why are you still standing there? Hawkeye smiled bitterly. He didn't say anything, but his figure suddenly moved and appeared in front of Amy like teleportation. Bang! Amy just reacted and looked at him in horror. The next moment, her vision went black, and she fell to the ground. Hawkeye took off the handkerchief and looked at Amy, who was in a coma. He turned to Dean. Elder, I'll call someone to move her away and change the carpet. Dudian looked at him meaningfully. He was worthy of being Carrie's confidant. Carrie had served as his secretary and bodyguard. He should be the strongest in the 9th region. He should be at the top of senior hunters, or even stronger than them. It should be because of his magic marks. No wonder Carrie had put him in an important position. It didn't take long for Hawkeye to find Dean again after Hawkeye took the unconscious Amy out. Elder, the chairman has come to see you. Chairman, Dean narrowed his eyes. Why did the old pope look for him so soon? Bring him in. Yes. A figure covered in a black robe, wearing a black hood and a mask came into the room. His whole body exuded a cold aura, but the heat in his body was as strong as fire, not inferior to Hawkeye next to him, even a bit stronger. A person at the same level as a saint? Dean looked at Hawkeye. You go out first. Yes. Hawkeye respectfully left. Greetings, Elder Devil King. This is the letter from a chairman. The man in black robe's voice was hoarse. It was obvious that he was deliberately controlling his voice. He took out a letter from his pocket. It seemed that he was afraid of leaving traces on the letter. He handed it to Dean. Dean didn't take it, but glanced at it. There was a black sickle logo on the letter. It was the mark of the chairman of the Dark Faction. The black-robed man bowed slightly, turned around, and left without another word. Dean watched him leave. After he left, he took out a handkerchief from his arms, carefully picked up the letter, and opened it. Chapter 470. Dean slightly raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect to find a job for him to do. Dispatch 10 followers to kill Marley at 7:15. One of them must be a 3-star alchemist. Don't alert the enemy, and don't let the target leave the hunting range. Target location, Falkland Street 12. The content was short. There wasn't any extra words except for the task. The task should be to kill Marley. But the number of people and the identity of the followers are specified. Dean narrowed his eyes. I'd like to personally see who this Marley is. He memorized the handwriting on the letter and burned it so that no one would find it and expose his identity. Although the handwriting on the letter might not be the old Pope's, it was most likely written by one of his confidants. Hawkeye. Dean called out as the ashes extinguished. The door was pushed open. Hawkeye respectfully came in. "Elder, what's your command?" "Go and investigate who Marley is. He is the one who lives on Falkland Street," Dean ordered. Hawkeye complied. It didn't take long for Hawkeye to return to the room. "Elder, I've found out that Marley is a professor of history at Druid College. He is 58 years old and was born in a declining knight family. His grandfather was a silver knight. His family has 20 acres of land. His father has passed away, and his mother is living in a small town in his hometown. He temporarily lives in Falkland Street 12. He paused as he looked at Dudian. He seems to have another identity. He is a follower of nature's religion. Dean didn't expect Hawkeye to investigate this person so quickly. He was surprised by the intelligence network of the Dark Church. Nature? Are you talking about the nature that doesn't believe in God? Yes. Hawkeye respectfully nodded. The nature doesn't believe in the God of light. They always talk about materialism and blasphemy. Their activities were relatively low-key a few years ago, but they have become more and more frequent in the last 2 years. There have been several conflicts between the Ninth Region and the nature, but there hasn't been any fierce conflict. Why? Elder Carey said that the Radiant Church wants to deal with them even more than we do. This bone should be left for the Radiant Church to chew. Dean nodded slightly. It seemed that Carey wasn't sent by the monastery, but in the end he believed the old pontiff's other identity and handed over the position to Dean. The monastery was able to eradicate a real elder of the Dark Church without much effort. Moreover, they were able to support their own people. It was the sharpest knife in the monastery. "Are there any 3-star alchemists who are free?" Dudian asked. Hawkeye thought for a moment. "A few. Pick one of them and let him take 9 people with him to kill Marley tonight. We'll leave at 6 o'clock. Dudian ordered. Hawkeye was taken aback. "You want to kill him yourself? Let's meet him and learn about nature," Dudian casually said. Hawkeye understood and didn't dare to ask any more questions. After Hawkeye left, Dean sat on the chair and thought for a moment. He suddenly thought of something. He took out the animal glue mask and applied it on his face. He couldn't always wear a mask in the future. In case someone tried to imitate his appearance and convey false orders, it would cause unpredictable consequences. Moreover, the protective effect of the animal glue mask was stronger than the mask. He didn't use it before because he was worried that it might be poisoned. But now he had the Night King's water, so he didn't need to worry about it. Moreover, he had told Hawkeye that he was wearing the animal glue mask. If he didn't get poisoned, then Hawkeye's expression would change. After all, he was the only one who had access to the animal glue mask besides the monastery. The thin animal glue mask was attached to his face. It was like a soft layer of skin that penetrated into the pores. He looked in a mirror and saw that his appearance had changed. The animal glue mask seemed to have disappeared from his face. Only by concentrating on it could he see the slight differences in the pores of his face. He kneaded his face and saw that his appearance in the mirror had changed. It was like he could knead at will. It's amazing. I didn't think that the monastery could make such a thing. Dudian exclaimed in his heart. This thing allowed him to disguise himself as almost anyone. In this era where the detection methods were weak, it was simply a weapon to commit crimes. However, it would be fine if the magistrate didn't alarm the punishers. Once the punishers got involved, it would be impossible for him to hide from them just by changing his face. After all, the face could be changed, but the smell emitted from the pores was difficult to hide, unless he wore other perfumes all the time. My voice doesn't sound like an old man. I should change to a young face. Dudian kneaded his face in front of the mirror. Time passed by in a hurry. It was 6 o'clock in the evening. Trun and his 9 friends were waiting by the carriage outside the manor. From time to time, he would look at the time from his pocket watch. His heart was full of tension and excitement. He didn't think that he would be able to go on a mission with the elder of the Dark Church. He felt like he was in a dream. Moreover, the difficulty of the mission wasn't high, so he could fully express himself. He understood that it was better to rely on the elder than to do well. If he could rely on the elder of the Dark Church, then he might be promoted again in the future. When he told his friends about the news, his friends rushed to give him gifts just to get a place in the team. This made him a little vain, But in order not to affect his performance, he didn't choose friends who were also 3-star alchemists like him. Instead, he chose some friends who he met in the early days and were still wandering at the bottom. Two figures came out of the manor while he was waiting nervously. Trun's eyes lit up as he recognized one of them. It was the famous Hawkeye, the personal secretary of the Elder. Even a 5-star alchemist would be polite to him. Trun's heart beat fiercely as he thought of this. His eyes fell on the young man next to Hawkeye. It was a handsome young man in his early 20s. He had black hair and warm eyes. His figure was slender and had a unique temperament. Elder, Trun stepped forward and saluted in a low voice. Dudian wrinkled his brows. Hawkeye softly reprimanded Trun. "You brainless thing. What are you talking about? We are outside." Trun was scared as his face turned pale. He looked at Dudian. "I'm sorry. I couldn't help, but..." Dudian was too lazy to pursue the matter. "Is everyone here? Get ready to go." "Yes, everyone is here," Trun replied in a trembling voice. Dudian nodded and sat down in a carriage. Hawkeye looked at Dudian. "You really don't need me to accompany you? No, you can go back." Dudian closed the door. Trun went back to the carriage and winked at his friends. All of them quickly got into the carriage. Trun whispered to Dudian inside the carriage. "Are we leaving?" "Yes." Trun drove the carriage and left the manor. After the carriage entered the city, it deliberately took a few detours before entering Falkland Street. Trun jumped out of the carriage and came to the side of Dudian's carriage. "We have arrived. Are we going to start now?" His tone was full of respect. His heart was full of apprehension as he had made a mistake in front of Dudian. Dudian opened the door and looked at the tall building in front of him. He could see two figures inside the building. One of them was busy and seemed to be a servant. The other one should be Marley. "Clean up the scene. Don't let the Holy Church find any traces." Dudian said, "Wait for me to come out. Moreover, no one is allowed to come in without my permission." "Yes." Trun respectfully smiled. Dudian didn't look at him as he strode towards Marley's door and gently knocked. Soon, the door opened. An ordinary-looking middle-aged woman wearing servant clothes looked at Dean in confusion. "Who are you?" "I'm looking for Mr. Marley." Dudian smiled. "Come in. Mr. Marley is in the study room on the second floor. I'll call him for you." The middle-aged woman looked at Dudian's handsome face. She opened the door and took out a pair of clean slippers and handed them to Dudian. Dudian put on the slippers and came to the living room. He was surprised to find that the living room was full of bookcases. "Mr. Marley will come down in 5 minutes." The middle-aged woman went downstairs and poured tea for Dudian. Dudian thanked her and quietly waited for the tea. The middle-aged woman used a rag to wipe and clean the room. She looked at Dudian from time to time. Dudian felt that he shouldn't make himself so handsome. It was too eye-catching. 5 minutes passed quickly. The sound of footsteps came from upstairs. An old man with black and white hair and a slightly hunched back came downstairs. He looked at Dudian, who was sitting on the sofa in the living room. He was somewhat puzzled, but seeing Dudian's extraordinary clothes, he came over and pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose. "You are?" Dudian smiled. "Hello, Mr. Marley. I'm an elder of the 9th region of the Dark Church." The polite smile on Marley's face froze. He was startled. He was startled because of 2 reasons. First, he had never heard of a member of the Dark Church who was hiding in the dark. But now, he had formally introduced himself to others as if he wasn't from the Dark Church but the Knight's Hall. Second, he didn't expect that a member of the Dark Church would be sitting in front of him. Moreover, it was an elder-level big shot. "Dark Church?" At this time, an astonished voice sounded from the side. It was the middle-aged woman who cleaned the place. Her face was filled with astonishment as she stared at the handsome young man on the sofa with disbelief in her eyes. But soon, a great fear surged out, and she reacted. Just as she was about to open her mouth to scream, she suddenly felt a pain in her neck. Her vision suddenly turned black, and she fell down. Blood spurted out from her neck and quickly spread on the ground. Dudian raised his arm. It seemed that he was holding something, but it was gone. The white plate under the teacup that the middle-aged woman handed to him was gone. The plate was dyed red. Dean smiled as he looked at Marley. There seemed to be a force in the depths of Dean's gentle eyes that pressed down on Marley's mouth. Marley's mouth was slightly open, but he couldn't make sound. You. Marley's body slightly shook. His face was pale as he turned to look at the middle-aged woman who was lying on the ground. He looked at Duddian in anger as he clenched his fists. It seemed that he was restraining himself, but he was afraid. What are you going to do? Chapter 471. Nothing. Dean smiled. I'm just here to chat with you. Don't be nervous. Marley's face turned ugly as he suppressed his anger. You are looking for me. She is innocent. She is just an ordinary civilian. Don't you think it is shameful to kill innocent people? All those who die are innocent. So there is no such thing as innocence. Dean indifferently smiled. I came to talk to you about nature's teachings. Marley's pupil shrank as he heard the words nature religion. He took a deep breath and sat down on the sofa. The anger in his eyes had subsided. I knew that you people would come to my door sooner or later. That's why you only hired a servant. Yes. Does you include the Holy Church? Marley looked at Dean. Is there any difference? There is no difference. Dean looked at the old man who had the temperament of an old scholar. He smiled. Since you know that there will be such a day, why do you live alone? Isn't it more dangerous? Marley asked, so you think that I should live in a turtle shell? Duddian said, each of us seems to be living in a turtle shell. There is a trace of mockery in Marley's eyes. That's why our thoughts can't be imprisoned. You believe in the false gods, and they're the root of everything. Everything in the world is composed of matter. It's the matter that makes life. It's not the so-called God of light or the great holy God. It's a pity that you don't care about the truth in front of you. You like to believe in baseless lies. Ridiculous and pathetic. Dean glanced at the bookshelves. If I'm not wrong, then these are the books you wrote. You pushed you out because you knew that you would be exposed. That's why you didn't send anyone to protect you. Marley snorted coldly and said, I wasn't pushed out. I came on my own will. Questioning the existence of laughable people like you will naturally result in your revenge. Everything is within my expectations. You know that you're going to die, but you still jumped out. Don't you have any attachment to life? I'm attached to a world where people's minds are liberated. Dean said, unfortunately, you can't do anything. Your book has been seized by the Holy Church and listed as a banned book. No one will listen to your words. No one will know what you have done. Your existence is meaningless. Well, perhaps the only meaning is to die in my hands. Marley's eyebrows twitched slightly as he snorted coldly. Nothing in this world can stop people from pursuing the truth. Even if my book becomes a banned book, as long as one person reads the book that I've sold to the outside world, what I've done will be meaningful. It's a pity that people will never know if they are pursuing the truth or not. Dean got up and went to the bookshelf. He glanced at all the books. All of them were signed Marley. The Honest Man, Philosophical Correspondence. Duddian took out a random book. Are all of you trying to destroy religion with your mouth? Dean indifferently said, I just want to know about your religion. I want to see if you have the capital to compete with the Holy Church. Duddian indifferently said, I just want to know about the nature religion. I want to see if you have the capital to contend with the Holy Church. Dean indifferently said, I just want to know about your religion. I want to see if you have the capital to compete with the Holy Church. Marley sneered. Do you want to use the religion to attack the Holy Church? Why not? Duddian smiled. Isn't it the same thing as attacking the Holy Church? As for the Dark Church, you are just cursing us. After all, no one cares about what we believe in, including ourselves. Marley was startled. Dean sat back on the sofa and raised the Philosophical Correspondence. This book is good. Can I take it back? Marley sneered. You have to believe in materialism if you want to understand this book. Of course I believe in materialism. Dean shrugged. Marley was startled again. He took a moment to react. You are indeed a member of the Dark Church. You will do anything to achieve your goals. You will even betray the God you believe in. No matter what you do, I won't tell you the headquarters of the religion. Don't even think about it. Dean faintly smiled. It has nothing to do with it. I really believe in it. Marley frowned as he looked at Dean's eyes. There is no God in this world. If there was, then we wouldn't be living in the giant wall. Dean smiled. Only those who have stepped out of the giant wall will know that the so-called God is bullshit. Marley narrowed his eyes. How can you become an elder of the Dark Church if you don't believe in the great devil? Dean smiled. I'm an elder. What does it have to do with me believing in the great devil? Do people who believe in the God of light can become the Pope? Do people who believe in the God of light can get justice? Do people who believe in love can get love? There's no such thing in this world. Marley was startled. There was a trace of trance in his eyes as he remained silent. Dean looked at the time. It was almost 7:15. He looked at Marley. If you believe me, then you can tell me how to join the Nature Order. Instead of being enemies with both the Holy Church and the Dark Church, it's better to deal with one of them. There's a saying that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I hope we can be friends. Marley slowly turned his head and looked at the vase next to the bookcase. There were a few roses inside. There was a trace of sadness in his eyes. You are right. Dean slightly raised his eyebrows, as he didn't know which sentence Marley was referring to. Marley said, the method to join the religion is in the book in your hand. You will naturally know how to join when you read the book. Dean was startled as he looked at the book in his hand. All the books here are hiding such secrets. Yes. Dean couldn't help but shake his head. Thank you. I'll make the move quickly. Marley was silent as he looked at the roses in the vase. Dean glanced at him, turned around, and stepped over the body of the middle-aged woman on the ground. He left the room and bowed slightly at the door. He put on his shoes and closed the door. He held a book in his hand, like a student visiting his teacher. His etiquette was thoughtful as he walked down the stairs. Tron, who was hiding in the dark outside the door, jumped out as he saw Dean. Elder. Dean's expression returned to indifference. Don't let him suffer too much. Yes. Tron nodded and waved his hand. He rushed in with 2 people. The rest hid in the surroundings as sentries. Bang! Dean heard him rudely kick open the door that he had just gently closed. When he opened his eyes again, he saw a large amount of scorching air hidden in the neighboring building. With a swoosh, his figure swayed slightly and disappeared from the street as if he had turned into smoke. At the same time, Dean disappeared. The sound of armors rubbing echoed in the street. The uniform pace came from all directions and completely surrounded Marley's house. Everything was covered by the cold night. On a small path by the Tyza River, a tall and slender young man strolled leisurely. Looking at the reflection of the moon on the surface of the lake, there was a trace of nostalgia in his eyes, but he quickly shook his head and smiled. I'll only be gone for a few days. At the end of the straight Tyza River, an ancient castle stood alone in the darkness of the night, with faint candlelight shining through. Chapter 472. Bastard. In the empty hall of the castle, the teenager punched the table. What bullshit Knight's Hall. Not only did they not help Dean, but they even took away Dean's Medal of Honor. Damn it. Nicholas, who was dressed like a butler, sat on the sofa and sipped his tea. He said indifferently, the more exquisite something is, the more times it needs to be trimmed. Only by cutting off the ugly and uncomfortable parts will it look perfect. What is there to be angry about? Mason looked at him in anger. Don't talk nonsense. Dean has been taken away for 3 days, and there's no news from him. Aren't you worried? On the other side, Sergei was leaning against the wall. What's the use of being anxious? Glenn and Gwyneth have already sneaked into the inner wall. We can only wait for their news. What's the point of being angry? Mason's face was ugly as he clenched his teeth. His eyes were full of grievances and unwillingness. Nicholas took out a pair of nail scissors and trimmed his hard nails. Haven't you seen it yet? There is no news about him in the newspapers these 2 days. Old Feline said that the military has issued an order to prohibit the newspapers from publishing any reports about Dean. They are planning to let him slowly fade out of people's sight. After a long time, he will eventually be forgotten, and this matter will be covered under people's memories. Even the Holy Church hasn't come forward, so we are just struggling in vain. Zach, who was sitting on the sofa calmly, said, We can't give up even if it's in vain. Who will help him if we give up? I don't care. I'll go to the magistrate tomorrow and ask them to help us get justice, Mason said in a hateful tone. Nicholas glanced at him but didn't bother to pay attention to him. Sergei was about to open his mouth when he frowned. Who? Everyone was surprised as they looked around. Oh! A soft laughter echoed from the stairs of the second floor. Everyone was stunned as they looked at the source of the laughter. They saw a teenager sitting on the stairs. He was smiling as he looked at everyone in the hall. It was Dean. At this moment, Dean had already kneaded the animal gloom mask on his face into his own appearance. He smiled and came down the stairs. It seems that a lot of things have happened in the past 2 days. Like a cat that had its tail stepped on, Nicotine was stunned for a moment before jumping up from the sofa. He was so nervous that he stuttered, Young master, why did you suddenly come back? Dean walked over and patted his shoulder. Don't be so nervous if you haven't done anything wrong. Nicholas stiffened and smiled bitterly. Yes, young master. Macon was startled for a moment. His eyes widened as he excitedly said, Dean, you are back. Dean. Zach was also surprised. Dean sat on the sofa and smiled. I've let you worry about me. Once Glenn and Gwyneth come back, tell them that they don't need to sneak into the inner wall anymore. It's to avoid any accidents. Sergei was surprised. You smuggled back? Do the people in the inner wall know? Nothing for the time being. Dean said, You don't have to run around for me anymore. Wait for them to come back and do what I told you before. If you don't have enough money, then go to Old Feline to borrow it. Sergei was startled. He suddenly thought of something and his face changed. When you came back, the people outside... Don't worry, I avoided them. Dean smiled but narrowed his eyes. There are 8 people lurking outside and they're distributed in 8 directions. All the paths are blocked. They should be from the same force. Have you contacted them? Do you know who they are? Sergei shook his head. We don't dare to beat the grass and scare the snake. But Glenn had secretly approached them and said that they were from the Dark Church. Dark Church? Dean's eyes lit up as he smiled. These people are cute. They didn't stare at you, but were stared at by Glenn. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other and smiled. Nicholas laughed and said respectfully, Young master, when Glenn and the others went out, they all sneaked out through the ground. These people simply don't know. Dean nodded. Glenn was a top assassin. There were only a few people in the outer wall who could track her. These people should be from the same group that poisoned me. Some information flashed through Dean's mind. He had an outline in his heart. He asked, What is the recent situation of the Mel family? We didn't pay attention to it. Nicholas bowed his head. Dean knew the reason, but didn't blame him. I'll solve it. You don't need to worry about anything. You just need to do what I told you. Especially Nicholas. Sergei, your task is very important. Sergei, in addition to recruiting mercenaries, you also need to establish a stronghold outside the giant wall. That will be our last retreat. In addition, I will personally pick up the materials from the monster's body. You will receive them in the stronghold outside the giant wall in 2 days. Sergei knew what Dean was referring to. He nodded, I will. I'll get the materials, and you can use the rest. Dean glanced at them. Where is Noyce? Why isn't he here? Nicholas replied. Master, Noyce went to Old Patriarch to inquire about your news. He should be back soon. Duddy nodded. At this time, footsteps were heard from the stairs. It was Yvette who was holding Gabriel and Artemis. The 3 of them were stunned as they saw Dean sitting on the sofa. Yvette had rushed over when she heard the sound, but they didn't expect it to be Dean. Gabriel and Artemis knew what happened. They were pleasantly surprised to see Dean return safely and immediately ran over. Dean had noticed them practicing swordsmanship with Yvette when he sneaked into the castle. He smiled and touched Artemis's head. Did you listen to your brother's words? Yes, Artemis replied in a well-behaved manner. Gabriel smiled and said respectfully, Greetings, young master. You are finally back. You will always come back. Dean patted his shoulder and turned to Mason and Zach. You will practice with Gabriel in the future. Old Feline will send you a batch of God's blessings so that you can become strong as soon as possible and have the power to protect yourselves. All right, Mason smirked. Once Glenn and the others come back. Nicholas, let Glenn cooperate with you. Sergei, you and Gwyneth will be responsible for hunting outside the giant wall. Dudian looked at Nicholas and Sergei. Teach Macon and the others when you have free time. Yes. Nicholas and Sergei accepted the order. Dean smiled. You go up first. I have something to talk to Yvette. Everyone looked at each other and led Gabriel and Artemis upstairs. Yvette saw Dean waving to her. What? Dean used her language. Do you want to go back? Yvette was stunned. You? Are you willing to let me go? There was a trace of trembling in her voice. She was brought here by Dean. She didn't expect to escape from the hands of the devil. She didn't expect him to be merciful and let her go. Dean smiled. It's useless to keep you here. Your only role is to be a hostage. I will let you go, but there is a condition. Yvette suddenly woke up from her dream. She knew that he wouldn't be so kind. She coldly said, What's your condition? Speak. Dean smiled. My condition is very simple. I want you to be the king. Yvette was stunned for a long time. She suddenly understood and snorted. Stop dreaming. First of all, in our system, a woman can't be a chieftain. She can only be a witch. I have royal blood, so it's impossible for me to be a witch. Moreover, I won't help you even if I become the king of the chiefs. Dean calmly said, What do you think I need your help with? Yvette was stunned. The purpose of you barbarians is nothing more than to enter the Golden Wall. There is no plague and no disaster. You want to kill the people who have expelled you from the Golden Wall. Dean indifferently said, My goal is the same. But your goal is the outer wall. My goal is the inner wall. I don't want you to help me, but you should beg me to help you. Yvette's eyes widened. Are you going to rebel against the inner wall? I will betray myself if I don't rebel against others. Dean replied. Chapter 473. Yvette stared at him in a daze. After a moment of silence, she said, Even if I want to help you, I can't do anything. I'm a woman, and I can't be a chieftain. Moreover, some of my brothers are very talented. I can't compete with them. There is nothing you can't do as long as you are willing to do it, unless you are not willing to pay the price. Dean quietly looked at her. It won't be difficult for you to be a tribal chief with my help. As for your brothers, they are a hindrance, so get rid of them. Yvette's face changed, and she looked at him in anger. You want me to kill my brother? If you want to be the king, aren't you willing to pay this price? Dean looked at her eyes, and there seemed to be a sharp sword slowly stabbing out from the depths of his peaceful eyes. Yvette's face turned ugly. What's the point of climbing to the throne with blood on my hands? Dean indifferently smiled. The so-called meaning is the harvest you get after completing a task. The tribal chief's rights, glory, and the ability to lead your people into the Golden Wall. No matter how many years pass, you will be remembered by people. Aren't these enough to move you? Yvette gritted her teeth. I don't need to be remembered by people. I don't need the tribal chief's rights. I just want to live on the land we belong to. I don't want to be exiled barbarians. That's my dream. But what's the point of my dream if I kill my brothers and sisters for this? They're dead. Even if I can eventually lead my people to live inside the wall, but these people will lose their loved ones. Isn't this very ironic? Dean's brows wrinkled. He didn't expect that this female savage valued family so much. He thought that her father, the savage chief, had dozens of children and his descendants would not be too united. They might even fight against each other for resources. However, it seemed to be the opposite. Did the harsh environment outside the wall make them cherish it more? You will think so, but it doesn't mean that your brothers will think the same. Dean looked at her. They will try their best to get rid of you if they know that you have a trump card to compete with them. Moreover, if you reject my conditions, how can I assist you? Without my help, your people won't be able to step into the wall in this life. Don't tell me that the future of your people is not as important as a few of your relatives. I need to think about it, Yvette said with a complicated look in her eyes. Dean stared at her for a moment. Okay, I'll let Glenn send you back. I'll give you a week to think about it. I hope I'm satisfied with your answer. We'll meet at the 8th fortress under the Red Maple Mountains. Yvette breathed a sigh of relief and nodded. I'll give you an answer. Dudian nodded and waved. Go and pack your luggage. Yvette gave him a long look, got up, and went upstairs. The sound of horses' hooves echoed from outside the castle as Yvette went up the stairs. Soon, the sound of horses' hooves reached the entrance of the manor. A figure came in and was about to speak when he saw Dean sitting on the sofa in the hall. "I'm back." Duddian smiled. Noise came back to his senses and said with surprise and joy, Young master, when did you come back? Did they send you back? That's great." "I sneaked back." Dean looked at his travel-worn appearance. He knew that he had been running outside. "Did you go to the Rhine family?" Noise nodded. "Young master, if they couldn't find you, would they come here? Wouldn't it be too dangerous for you to stay here?" "Don't worry about it for the time being." Duddian waved his hand. "Tell me about the situation of the Ryan family. I heard that you went to them for help. What did they say?" Noise honestly replied. "Old Foulin said that he will find a way. He has contacted other nobles and is ready to let the magistrate investigate the matter. But the magistrate hasn't given a reply yet." Duddian nodded. "Old Foulin is very loyal." "Yes." Noise nodded. "It's just that his children aren't that great." "Humph! They owe us a huge sum of money and don't even have a place to live. They've been staying here for so long, but they didn't even say a word of thanks before leaving. Now that I'm here, they're worried that I'll cause trouble for them." Duddian indifferently smiled. "Don't be offended. Are you willing to follow me in the future?" Noise said without thinking. "Of course I am willing. When you took me out of the dark prison, I swore that I would follow you everywhere for the rest of my life." Duddian narrowed his eyes. "But the place we are going to is very bitter. Your face may need to be peeled off and replaced with a new one." Noise was stunned. The image of skinning flashed in his mind. His whole body instinctively shivered and cold sweat emerged. But looking at Dean's gentle eyes, he felt that his chest was pressed by a big stone. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. He took a deep breath and said, "I'm willing." Dean deeply looked at him and smiled. The atmosphere suddenly relaxed. "It's not as bitter as you think. If you know how to taste it, there will be sweetness in bitterness." Noise sighed in relief. He smiled bitterly. "Even if it's worse than the prison, I'll accept it." Dean smiled but didn't deny it. He raised his hand and clapped. Sergei and others on the second floor heard the sound and came down to the hall. Yvette was among them who had changed into armor. Duddian looked at Sergei. "Ask Glenn to send her away when she comes back." Sergei looked at Yvette. "Are we going to let the female barbarian go? We don't need her as a hostage." "The value of a hostage depends on the love of others. There hasn't been any news from the barbarian for a long time. Obviously, she doesn't intend to go back." Duddian stood up. "It's getting late. I took the opportunity to sneak out. I can't stay outside for long. It's easy to arouse suspicion. You don't need to look for me. I'll come to you if there's anything. Are you going back to the inner wall?" Mason was surprised. Duddian smiled and patted Mason's shoulder. He didn't answer Mason's question. He looked at Noise. "Go pack up and prepare to go with me." Noise nodded and quickly went upstairs. "Are you going to take Noise with you?" Sergei raised his eyebrows. "Glenn and Gwyneth are more suitable if you need help." Duddian laughed. "Noise isn't worse than them." Chapter 474. Dean said goodbye to everyone after Noise put away the luggage. He took Noise out from the back of the castle. Two figures quietly arrived outside of town in the middle reaches of the Tyza River. Dean stopped and rubbed his face with the help of the moonlight. He changed his face into an ordinary young man's face. Young master." Noise was completely shocked as he saw Dean's magical change. Dean didn't hide it from him. "I didn't sneak out. I came to the outer wall to serve as an elder of the Dark Church. This mask is used to cover up my identity. It's called Animal Glue Mask. It can change the face at will. It's too precious, so there's only one. From now on, when you follow me, you have to change your face and identity. Otherwise, if others know your identity, they will guess my identity." Noise's eyes widened in shock. Dean looked at him, but didn't speak. Noise slowly digested the shocking news. "You want to take me to join the Dark Church?" "Yes, I know. You used to be a Knight of Light of the Holy Church. There will be a bit of resistance in your heart." Dean patted his shoulder. "You will get used to it as you see more." Noise took a deep breath. There is nothing to contradict. I was framed by the Holy Church and ended up in this state. I have been in Thornflower Prison for years, and I don't believe in God. There is no light in the Holy Church if there is no justice. You are the one who gave me my life. Being loyal to you is my justice. It seems that I didn't misjudge you. Dean smiled. The process of joining the church will be a bit painful. You will need to peel off your face and replace it with a new one. Can you bear it? The corner of Noyce's mouth twitched. As long as I don't die, there is nothing I can't endure. That's good. Dean smiled. In fact, it won't hurt. You just need to have a good sleep. The only thing is that Noyce is dead. Noyce died a long time ago, Noyce muttered. Dean nodded and looked at the town behind him. This is a small nest of the Dark Church in the 8th region. We have the materials we want. You wait here, and I'll go and get them. Yes. Noyce nodded. Dean took off his coat and gave it to him. He sneaked into the town alone. The base of the 8th region was located under the manor of a respected squire. He snuck into a farmer's house and took a set of the farmer's clothes, which reeked of sweat and chicken droppings. He put it on and rushed to the squire's manor. 10 minutes later, a figure flew out of the town and appeared by the river like a ghost. Noyce, who was holding Dean's coat, was shocked. He was relieved when he saw Dean. The next moment, he smelled a strong smell of blood. Are you hurt? No. Dean took off the farmer's coat that was stained with blood and threw it into the river. He put the package in his hand next to him and squatted by the river to wash his hands. As soon as his hands were in the flowing water, the blood spread from his palms and flowed downstream. Noyce noticed the package. Are these the materials? Yes, the materials and other items to help you change your face. Dean said. He didn't take the alchemy materials as it would inevitably arouse suspicion. After washing his hands, Dean got up and grabbed the package. Let's go and find a place. We will finish it tonight. Noyce subconsciously touched his cheek. There was a bit of stubble on his rough face. He silently nodded and followed behind Dean. Headquarters of the Dark Church in the 9th region. In the luxurious castle of the manor, Hawkeye, dressed in a luxurious black suit, stood on the balcony of the castle and looked into the distance. At this moment, the sky was already bright. The sun on the horizon pressed the darkness tightly on the ground. The place where the sun met was gray, like the ashes of flame. Hawkeye frowned as he looked at the servant next to him. The night has passed. Haven't you found the elder yet? The attendant said in a trembling voice, We have already investigated. Among the people of the Holy Church, there is no trace of your lordship. There are only 10 disciples led by Tron. Your lordship should have escaped during the battle. At present, there is no news of your lordship. We have contacted all the branches to search everywhere, but there is no news yet. Hawkeye indifferently said, Have you found out why there was a large number of Knights of Light in the streets of Falkland? The subordinate is still investigating. The servant replied carefully. Hawkeye narrowed his eyes. It is best to find out when the sun rises. Otherwise, it will be your sunset. The attendant's face turned pale. He lowered his head and said, I'll go now. After saying that, he bowed and excused himself, then turned around and ran away. Hawkeye turned his head and looked down at the street outside the manor. Suddenly, he saw 2 figures coming from the corner of the street. They were wearing black robes and hoods. Their faces were shrouded in shadows. He was startled for a moment. With his powerful vision, he suddenly saw one of the figures making a gesture with his hand by the sleeve. Seeing this gesture, Hawkeye was suddenly stunned. He quickly clapped his hands, pressed it on the balcony, turned over and jumped down, and quickly went to the manor. Elder, Hawkeye respectfully said to the figure who made the gesture. Dean gently lifted the hood and revealed the handsome face of the youth. Let's go in first. Yes. Hawkeye respectfully nodded. He glanced at the figure next to Dean. Who is this? His code name is Golden Wolf. He will be my personal attendant in the future. Dean said. Hawkeye was startled as he looked at Golden Wolf. Elder, please. Dean entered the manor first. Accompanied by Hawkeye, they soon came to the headquarters under the manor. In the square outside the hall, the fountain was sprinkling, but there were no people around. At this moment, it was early and the people who gathered here all returned to their respective residences and began their daytime life. The staff behind the counter yawned as they entered the hall. They were tired from the night work. Dean sat on the chair in his office. He looked at Hawkeye. "Is there anything you want to say to me?" Hawkeye knew what Dean was referring to. He whispered, "Elder, it was our negligence this time. I don't know who leaked your whereabouts, and the Holy Church found you. Fortunately, you weren't hurt. I sent people to look for you all night, but they couldn't find any trace of you. I thought that you were secretly arrested by the Holy Church." Dean lightly tapped his fingers on the table. "It happened before 7:30 in the evening. 10 hours have passed. Haven't you found the traitor yet?" Hawkeye's forehead exuded cold sweat. "Elder, we sent people to look for your traces. There is no detailed investigation of our people. Please give me an hour, and I'll give you a reply." "Half an hour," Dean indifferently said. "Yes." Hawkeye bowed his head. He knew that there was no room for bargaining. The coldness in Dean's eyes disappeared. "Golden Wolf will be my personal attendant, and you will be my secretary. I know that you are one of Elder Carey's people. But now Elder Carey has gone to the inner wall. I believe that you should know who you are loyal to. As long as you are loyal to me, I won't treat you badly. Do you understand?" Hawkeye was shocked and hurriedly knelt down on one knee and said, "Sir, I have no disloyalty to you. Get up." Hawkeye slowly stood up. "Go. I want to know who dared to betray me," Dean said in a cold voice. Chapter 475. Noyce whispered to Dudian after Hawkeye left. "Master, what do I need to do?" "Change the way you address me. Don't call me Master anymore. Just call me like the others." Dudian gently leaned on the chair. "You don't need to do anything. I'll help you reach the peak of Senior Hunter's physique as soon as possible. Your devourer magic marks won't be afraid of toxins. You'll be the one to test my food and drink in the future. Remember not to expose your magic marks so that others will think of more vicious ways to poison you." Noyce replied in a low voice, "I understand, sir." Dudian nodded. He took the risk to bring Noyce to protect himself with the help of the devourer magic marks. After all, he was confident that he wouldn't lose to anyone in the outer wall. But there was no one in the world who would be so stupid as to fight in an open and above-board duel. Strong people often die in the hands of villains. Let alone him. Even 10 times stronger people may die if they encounter a powerful poison. Half an hour passed. Hawkeye came into Dudian's office with a scarred youth. He threw the youth on the carpet and reported, "Elder, the traitor is the one who leaked the information." Dean's eyebrows slightly raised as he looked at the dying youth. Under the cruel torture, his whole body was exposed. His hands seemed to have been smeared with something. His skin was rotten and brown. Some of the flesh and blood had fallen off as if it had been cooked at high temperature, exposing the white phalanges inside. His whole body was trembling, and he couldn't see any teeth in his mouth. He really found a scapegoat. Dudian glanced at Hawkeye. Hawkeye's heart skipped a beat as he saw Dudian's eyes. It seemed that all the secrets in his heart had been seen through. He lowered his eyebrows and looked at the carpet in front of his toes. Dudian intended to hit him to let him know that he wasn't so easy to fool. But he didn't intend to expose him. He looked at the scapegoat. "Why did you betray me? What is the reason?" The young man's body trembled. His mouth was slightly open, but no words came out. He vaguely said, I was wrong. My lord, spare me." Dean looked at Hawkeye. "How am I going to ask the person behind him if he can't speak clearly?" Hawkeye's face slightly changed, and he quickly said, "This subordinate was careless. Sir, please punish me." "Forget it." Dean waved his hand. "What is this person's identity? Who did he work for? Tell me the truth." Hawkeye bowed his head. "Sir, this person is just a messenger. He has no backing. His father was a knight of the Dark Church, but he died in the war against the Holy Church. His mother also died long ago. He has no relatives." Dean sneered. "No backing, no relationship. How can I be your messenger?" Hawkeye was stunned. "You don't want to say? Or you didn't check it clearly?" Dudian narrowed his eyes. There was anger in his voice. Hawkeye's face turned pale as he said, "This subordinate did not hide anything from you. Please give this subordinate a little more time. This subordinate will definitely find out the mastermind behind him. Time is life. How can I give you so much time? Dean looked at the young man. Do you know what kind of sinner colluded with the Holy Church to frame an elder? You will be skinned, your bones will be scraped, and your tendons will be pulled out. Moss eggs will be poured into your mouth, ears, and nostrils. You will be immersed in a pig cage, and you will be sunk into the depths of a water prison. Only when your body is gnawed to death by the hatching moss can you be freed. The young man's pupils dilated as he looked at Dean in horror. Elder, I'm innocent. I didn't betray you. I really didn't, Dean indifferently said. I can spare your life if you tell me who is behind you. Just as Hawkeye said, he had no one to rely on. It was all because of Hawkeye's appreciation that he was able to become a messenger, but Hawkeye didn't recruit him after promoting him. He had been waiting for this day, but he didn't expect that instead of a promotion, he would be forced to confess under torture. Now he had to confess to someone else, but he didn't have any. How could he confess to someone else? I can guess it even if you don't say it. Dean indifferently said, I just imprisoned Amy and you betrayed me. Are you one of Amy's people? The young man was startled. Hawkeye suddenly turned around and scolded. Confess. You'd better confess. Is that right or not? When a young man heard the words leniency for those who confess, it was as if he was grasping at the last straw of his life, and he hurriedly said, Yes, it's like this. Sure enough, you are one of her people. Dean narrowed his eyes and looked at Hawkeye. Amy has just been detained by me. How dare you use her people to transmit my whereabouts? Hawkeye broke out in a cold sweat. He knelt down and said, My lord, I really don't know when he was bought by Amy. My lord, you must believe me. Dean coldly stared at him. Hawkeye anxiously looked at Dean. He wanted to use all the sincerity in his heart to let Dean know his sincerity and frankness. After looking at each other for a few seconds, he saw that the coldness in Dean's eyes gradually subsided. His taut heart suddenly relaxed, knowing that his sincerity had temporarily won Dean's trust. I believe you won't do such a stupid thing, Dean said indifferently, and then he changed the topic, but my carelessness almost put me in danger. This crime is inevitable. Hawkeye was bitter. He knew that he could not escape this disaster. He bowed his head and said, This subordinate pleads guilty. Please punish me. Temporarily exempt from punishment. Dean said in a cold voice, I hope you can redeem yourself and live up to my expectations. Yes, sir. Hawkeye was relieved and accepted the order. As for him, take him away, Dean said in a cold voice. Call all the members of Parliament for a meeting. Yes. Hawkeye stood up and pulled the young man out of the office. Noyce was touched. He could see the sinister nature of the dark church from the scars on the young man's body. He realized that there were few trustworthy people around Dean. Noyce became firmer in his heart. Let's go to the meeting. Dean got up. Noyce silently followed him. Dean had told him to be quiet. Chapter 476. After a moment, the first member of Parliament arrived. It was Angelia, who had been punished by Dean before. Angelica was stunned as she saw Dean sitting alone in the empty conference room. She signaled the attendants to retreat as she gently entered the conference room. Greetings, elder. Dean was lost in thought as he looked at the oil paintings on the wall. Angelia bumped into a wall and covered her face with a smile. She pulled out a chair and sat down. The other members of Parliament arrived one after another. Half an hour passed in the blink of an eye. There were 14 people in the conference room. There was one person who hadn't come except for Amy, who was imprisoned by Dean. Dean knew the whereabouts of the remaining person. He had gone to the Sword King's camp. Therefore, when everyone was present, he withdrew his gaze and slowly said, I'm sure everyone has heard about what happened yesterday. Everyone looked at each other. Tamakaw, who knew that he had left a bad impression on Roland, said, Sir, I've heard about this. Fortunately, you weren't injured. Otherwise, we would have blown a hole in the luminous church's branch. Dean indifferently said, I'm afraid there isn't anyone in the outer wall who can hurt me. Tom smiled as he thought of Dean's extraordinary strength. That's true. The news of this operation is confidential. Only a few people know about it. Dean's eyes were indifferent as he slowly glanced at everyone. Everyone's face slightly changed. An old man next to him said, "Elder, do you suspect that someone betrayed you?" Betrayed the elder? How could it be? Who would be so bold? Several people were filled with indignation. Dadian raised his hand to stop the anger. The person who leaked the news has been found. He gently snapped his fingers. The door of the conference room was pushed open. Hawkeye came in with the scapegoat and threw him to the ground. Dadian turned the chair and looked at the youth. "Tell everyone, who instructed you to betray me?" The youth's body trembled. He felt like a frog that had fallen into a snake's mouth. He trembled as he said, "Elder, Elder, it's Amy. Amy, Amy." Hearing this, everyone was moved. Amy? How is that possible? She wasn't. Everyone looked at each other. I heard that Representative Amy was dissatisfied with the elder's punishment yesterday and tried to kill you with poison in your office. She was imprisoned by you. It's likely that she harbored a grudge against you and ordered her people to instigate this man to betray you, the old man said. He waved his hand to ask Hawkeye to drag the man away. Amy poisoned me and was ready to take my head to Pluto. Now she secretly retaliated. I just wanted to punish her a little, but I didn't expect her to make mistakes again and again. From today onwards, Counselor Amy's lifetime right to participate in the council will be revoked. At the same time, all of Counselor Amy's wealth will be confiscated and used for the construction of the 9th District. From now on, anyone who colludes with Amy will be punished the same way. Does anyone have any objections? Looking at Dean's calm and compelling eyes, everyone was silent at the same time. I agree with the elder's suggestion. Tomac took the lead and said, I agree too. She poisoned the elder. That's an unforgivable crime. I agree. Everyone raised their hands one after another. In the end, only 4 people remained silent and did not express their opinions. Dean remembered the names of the 4 people and announced the end of the meeting. Dean told Hawkeye to deal with the youth after returning to the office. Hawkeye didn't find it surprising as he retreated. At the moment, dawn had just risen and the sky was bright. Dean asked the servant outside to bring breakfast and the morning newspaper. Jean, try it. Dean passed the milk and bread to Noyce. Noyce poured the milk into a small cup and took a sip. He tore a small piece of bread and ate it. Elder, it's not poisonous. Dean nodded slightly as he picked up the newspaper and began to eat. Guangming Daily Dash at 7:20 p.m. Yesterday, an evil member of the Devil Cult appeared on the streets of Falkland and brutally killed the history professor of Loy Academy, Marley. The Radiant Knights patrolling nearby noticed the commotion and rushed to the scene. However, they were still a step too late and failed to save Mr. Marley's life. There were 10 people who killed Professor Marley. One of them was a 3-star alchemist. All of them have been captured and will be purified by the Holy Flame in Oak Square at 9 o'clock this morning. Captain Mason led the team and personally captured the evil alchemist. He was awarded a Grand Knight Medal. Dadian frowned when he saw the name mark. The name was familiar. The first time he heard the name was during the scavenger trial. Mark had beheaded the captured alchemist. He was the son of the Mel family's patriarch, Mark. He was also Sarah's half-brother. Mel family. Dean narrowed his eyes. He didn't expect that the family that should have disappeared from his sight would appear in front of him again. Moreover, the task given to him by the Pope was to support the remnants of the Mel family. The old Pope knows my identity and the hatred between the Mel family and me. What is he trying to tell me by giving me such a task? Is he trying to forget the hatred of the past? Or is he simply beating me? Dean clenched the newspaper. His eyes flashed with killing intent. He didn't care about the matters of the Mel family. Ever since he was summoned to the inner wall, he had regarded the monastery as his enemy. He wanted to spend all his time planning a counterattack. He didn't expect that a descendant of the Mel family would be put in an important position by the old Pope. Moreover, the old Pope wanted him to be a stepping stone. The monastery want me to hide my identity and cooperate with you. But you want me to sacrifice my men to help my enemies. Oomph. Very good. Dean narrowed his eyes slightly, and the murderous look in his eyes gradually converged into his pupils. His expression also returned to indifference, and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry. He turned the newspaper and continued to read other news. As Sergei said, there was no news or reports about him in the newspaper. It was as if he had completely disappeared from the world. He suddenly felt that it was so easy to erase a person. As long as the whole world united and did not recognize his existence, it would be fine. Who could fight against the whole world? Oh, Dean gently smiled and slowly put down the newspaper. When he was about to look up, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a corner of the newspaper. His eyes suddenly froze, and then his breathing became rapid. Chapter 477. Whoosh! Dean grabbed the newspaper again. He stared at the corner of the newspaper. 72, Ive Street. The owner and his wife committed suicide by poison. It is suspected that they had a dispute with their neighbor which led to depression. He read it word by word, over and over again, without missing a single word. His palm faintly trembled, and each breath he exhaled contained a scorching hot air. Whoa! He suddenly stood up and crushed all the newspapers on the table, including the consortium's newspaper in his hand. Noyce was shocked to see Dean's angry appearance. He had followed Dean for a long time, but he had never seen Dean so angry. Even when Dean was insulted in prison, he didn't have such anger and killing intent. "You stay here," Dean said coldly and strode out of the office. Hawkeye, who had just finished his work, bumped into Dean in the corridor. He was about to greet Dean, but he noticed that the atmosphere wasn't right. He carefully asked, "Elder, that person has been dealt with. What are you going to do?" "I'm going out." Dean brushed past him. The wind swept over Hawkeye's face. Hawkeye felt a chill. "Don't let anyone follow me, or else you won't be able to return." Dean walked out of the corridor like a phantom. Hawkeye was startled as he turned his head. He only saw a corner of Dean's clothes. Dean rode out of the manor and rode a horse. It was a red-brown horse. It was a special horse belonging to the Stantine family, which was behind the 9th region. He didn't need to show any identification, as he could go to all parts of the outer wall. He could even go to the heavily guarded central area of the commercial district. Go! The healthy horse soared into the sky, as if it was riding on the red dust as it sped away. Dean came to the central area of the commercial district after an hour or so. It was bustling with activity. The streets were overcrowded with pedestrians and vehicles. He came to a relay station and dismounted. He threw the rope to the attendant, who ran up to him and said, "Take good care of it." After saying that, he turned around and entered the street, blending into the crowd. Amidst the bustling crowd, he quickly left the street and arrived at the neighboring street. Along the way, he quickly kneaded his face and changed his face. He grabbed a passerby, knocked him unconscious, and dragged him into an alley. Then, he stripped him of his clothes and changed them. After the disguise was done, he flipped over the alleyway and quickly left for the other side of the central district. After a quarter of an hour, Dean arrived at address 72 of Ive Street. He saw a spacious manor with a beautiful environment in front of him. Outside the manor, there was a carriage of magistrate. The carriage was reinforced with steel. It was full of iron and blood. A knight of the magistrate was leaning on the carriage. He was holding a piece of bread in his hand and was chewing it in a depressed manner. Inside the manor, there was a figure who seemed to be busy with something. From the air, Dean smelled the strong, pungent smell of blood and the smell of rotting corpses. Even after being diluted by the air, the smell didn't disperse for a long time. Even ordinary people could easily smell it, but it wasn't as strong as his. It penetrated deep into the lungs and bone marrow. Dean's heart sank. It was like falling into a cold frost lake. The chill penetrated into his blood. Whoosh! His figure disappeared into the street. The next moment, Dean's figure appeared on the top floor of the 3rd floor of the manor. He gently opened the skylight and slowly walked in. He saw the dust floating in the sunlight on the 3rd floor. It was obvious that it hadn't been cleaned for a long time. He was silent for a moment. He slowly walked to the second floor step by step. His movement was like a ghost and didn't make the slightest sound. He went down to the second floor and saw that the living room was in chaos. The pillows on the sofa were randomly thrown to the ground. It seemed that they had been ransacked by robbers. In the corner of the living room, there was a new textile machine. The light shone on it and the dust was floating. At the moment, the figure in the villa was busy on the first floor. He seemed to be moving something, making a dragging sound. Dean bit his lips slightly and quietly walked to the stairs. He suddenly saw a knight of the magistrate wearing several layers of gloves and a mask. His nostrils were bulging. It seemed that the mask alone was not enough to block his breathing. He squatted on the ground and kept retreating. His hands were dragging something. It was a corpse, a seriously rotten corpse. The corpse was a little swollen and already had livor mortis. His cheeks were full of scars from sharp blades, and there was a pool of blood near his ears. His ears had been cut off, and all his clothes had been stripped off. His towering chest and belly were full of whip marks. It wasn't hard to imagine what kind of torture he had gone through. The moment he saw the face of the corpse, Dean's mind went blank. He stood there in a daze. This face belonged to his adoptive mother, Jura. The last glimmer of hope in his heart was instantly shattered. It was as if he had fallen into the abyss. His whole body was cold. This villa was the place where he had ordered people to pick up Jura and her husband. The house had been transferred to Jura and her husband. Therefore, the moment he saw the news in the newspaper, his heart had been hanging in the air. Until now, his heart had sunk deeply. His mind was in chaos. He stood there in a daze. Jura's body was dragged by the night on the smooth wooden floor. Jura's eyes were wide open. They were full of panic and anger. She was like a sculpture. Her neck was tilted as she looked at Dean, who was at the stairs. Little by little, she disappeared from the wall until her whole body was dragged out of the villa. Dean froze in place. Suddenly, an electric light flashed in his mind, and he thought of the conclusion in the newspaper. Suicide. Suicide by poison? He was stunned for a moment. He suddenly grinned. He wanted to laugh, but couldn't. Suicide. There are so many scars on the body. The magistrate actually judged it as suicide. He was grinning, but 2 lines of sorrowful tears slowly flowed from his eyes and slid down his cheeks. The tears rolled down his cheeks and slowly dripped onto his chest. Only then did he slowly realize what was going on, and the grin on his face widened. But there was no laughter. It was like a person who laughed to the point of madness but couldn't laugh out loud. Once, he thought that he would never be emotional again. He would never cry again. But the reality ruthlessly rejected his idea. The world had never given anyone privileges. Chapter 478. Soon, the previous night dragged Jura's body out and returned to the living room. He went straight to the bottom of the stairs without noticing. If he turned his head and looked up at the top of the stairs, he would see a distorted face. He bent down and quickly pulled out another body. It was a middle-aged man. His chest was pierced by a table leg. There were many scars on his body. His eyes were wide open. When he was dragged past the entrance of the staircase, the young knight felt a little uncomfortable holding his breath. He exhaled lightly and suddenly felt something. He turned his head to look at the staircase, but it was empty. There was only a beam of light shining from the window at the top of the staircase, reflecting on the steps and dust floating in the light. He was relieved. It was just an illusion. He thought someone was here. He didn't dare to delay any longer. He grabbed the male corpse and continued to move it. In this dark room, where there were only corpses, even though he had been influenced by the Holy Church, he still felt a little scared. His hair stood on end, as if there were invisible ghosts staring at him in the dark. Soon, the second body was moved out. He quickly ran back, bent down, and stood up. This time he did not drag the body on the ground. It was a child, 8 or 9 years old. The child's eyes were gouged out, and one of his hands was broken. He died miserably. He carried the child's rotten leg, held his breath, and left quickly. He did not notice Dean, who had appeared at the staircase next to him. "Captain, the body has been moved out." A voice came from outside the door. "Oh, I'm coming." There was a response from the carriage outside the manor, and the sound of footsteps gradually approached. Ugh, it stinks. Yes, the body is like this. How many days has it been since he died? The youth who had moved the body said from the mask. The previous captain said, "Don't worry about it. It's too smelly. Quickly put in the body bag." "Captain, aren't we doing this job together? Go to hell. Do you want to die? I told you to do it." While the two were talking at the door, Dean slowly walked down the stairs step by step. His mouth was closed, and there was no expression on his face. Shrouded in darkness, his face could not be seen clearly. He did not make the slightest sound as he walked. When he reached the last step of the stairs, he slowly turned his head and looked at the living room where the youth had previously dragged the corpse. Suddenly, he saw a hellish picture. In the messy living room, there were putrid bloodstains everywhere. It seemed like a chaotic battle had broken out in the living room. All the decorations had been knocked over, and there were a few large pools of blood on the floor. One of the largest was beside the table, and it was obviously the place where Gray's chest had been pierced. Dean's eyes were dark, without a trace of fluctuation, as if all the flames reflected in his eyes would be swallowed by the darkness. He looked at them silently. His rich hunting experience was automatically organized in his mind. Through the bloodstains on the ground, he seemed to vaguely see the shadows of Jura and the others when they were alive. He could see the scene of the riot and death. 3 people were struggling. Jura was tied up. There was more than one person at the scene. Obviously, even a blind person could see that this was not a suicide, but an extremely brutal killing. He slowly walked closer and turned his head to look around. Judging from the familiar rotten smell of the corpses, the time of death of the 3 people was not 1 or 2 days, but at least half a month. Now was the middle of the black snow season, and the temperature was extremely low, but he could still smell such a strong stench. It could be seen that they had died for a long time. Who killed them? Dean's eyes were dark and empty, without the slightest killing intent or anger, but a kind of seeping silence. "It stinks. Let's go. I don't have an appetite for breakfast." At this time, the captain's voice and footsteps came from outside the door. Dean slowly turned his head and looked at the 2 people leaving through the gap of the window. The youth who had previously dragged the corpses was carrying 3 body bags and said to the captain in front of him, "Captain, this should be a vendetta. They died so miserably. Why did you say it was suicide?" "Shut up. You talk too much." The captain in front of him said angrily, "This is the matter of the higher-ups. If the higher-ups say it was suicide, then it was suicide. Are you the judge, or are they the judge? We just do our job. If you want to promote, you have to talk less. You have to learn to turn a blind eye to a lot of things. Otherwise, you can only be a corpse carrier in this life." "Turn a blind eye? Captain, do you think this is an injustice? Are you looking for a beating?" Yes, I won't ask." The 2 put the body bags in the car and drove away. Dean took back his eyes, his figure slightly flashed and disappeared from the living room. The next moment, his figure appeared in the nearby Manor 73 and knocked on the door. The door was opened, and a strong man came out. He squinted at Dean. "Who are you looking for? I heard that the family next door had an accident. Do you know what happened?" Dean asked. His voice was hoarse. When the strong man heard this, his face sank. "It's none of your business," he said, and tried to close the door, but he couldn't. Dean raised his hand to hold the door. His deep black eyes shot out 2 cold lights. The strong man shivered. He felt that the temperature of the air suddenly dropped by more than 10 degrees. It was so cold that he wanted to shiver. "Tell me what you know," Dean said word by word. The strong man swallowed his saliva. He felt as if there was an invisible death scythe on his neck. He said in a trembling voice, I really don't know. I only know that half a month ago, it was raining. It seemed that a group of people came to the house. At that time, I heard loud screams, and then for a long time afterwards, I didn't see the family appear. Until recently, a passerby smelled the smell of rotten corpses and reported the matter to the magistrate. When a magistrate arrived yesterday to investigate, I learned that the whole family committed suicide by poison. Half a month ago, Dean suddenly remembered something. His mouth slightly trembled. Half a month ago, he looked for Jura to treat him. He was silent. After a moment, he slowly turned around and said, "Don't tell anyone that I asked you. Otherwise, your family will also commit suicide by poison." The strong man's legs trembled. He saw from Dean's eyes that the other side was not joking. He said in a trembling voice, I won't talk about it." Dean glanced at the direction where the carriage left. His figure flashed and disappeared like a phantom. The strong man saw this scene and was scared to the point of screaming. He raised his hand to cover his mouth. He didn't dare to make a sound. He hurriedly closed the door tightly. He made up his mind to immediately move away from this unlucky and dangerous place. It didn't take long for Dean to track the previous carriage. Perhaps it was because of the corpses in the carriage did not travel along the commercial streets. Instead, it drove to a remote path in the suburbs. At this moment, snowflakes were gradually falling from the sky, and the secluded path became even more desolate. When the carriage moved, it made squeaking sounds, as if the skeletons of the dead were chewing something. Dean followed them from a distance. Soon he understood where they were going to drag the bodies of Jura and her husband. 10 minutes later, the carriage came in front of a towering, snow-capped mountain. The mountainside was covered with black snow. The top of the mountain was covered with brown stones. This was one of the 3 major volcanoes in the outer wall area. It was also a natural crematorium in the commercial district. The cemetery was expensive in the commercial district. Most of the ordinary people couldn't afford it. They didn't dare to dirty the public land. So they cremated the corpses of their relatives in the Shiva volcano. Shiva volcano meant heaven in the ancient language. It was the blessing of the people to be buried here. The carriage arrived outside the Shiva volcano. 2 knights took out the 3 body bags from the carriage and carried them to the volcano. Dean followed them like a ghost. The 2 of them seemed to be a little tired after carrying the body bag halfway. The captain looked back at the young knight who was gasping for breath. He thought for a moment and said, "Forget it. Let's find a magma pool nearby and bury them." The young knight was relieved and followed the captain to find a magma pool nearby. There were a few stone tombstones around the magma pool, and they were all crooked. The captain said, "Throw them here." The young knight threw the body bags into the magma pool. Dean looked at them in the dark. His eyes were cold, and his fingers slightly clenched into fists, but he did not move. With his strength, it would be effortless to kill these 2 people. But if these 2 people died, his identity would inevitably be exposed, and everything would be over. He was so angry that his heart trembled, yet he had to endure it. What kind of feeling was this? How much anger was there in life that could be vented in time? How much grievances could be turned into the deepest hatred? In the blink of an eye, the 3 body bags were thrown into the slowly flowing magma pool. But they didn't sink. The depth of the magma pool seemed to be very shallow. "Let's go. It's so hot." The captain waved his hand as he wanted to fan himself. The young knight looked at the slowly sinking body bags and followed them. Chapter 479. Utopia Mountain. It was the most famous mountain in the commercial district and even in the entire outer wall. It was the headquarters of the Holy Church. The mountain was 580 meters high, with steep cliffs and rugged mountains. It was covered with brilliant snow-white sunflowers. Every time black snow fell, the flowers would bloom even more beautifully. Not only would the thick black snow not freeze these delicate flowers to death, it would make them bloom even more brilliantly and beautifully. Thus, it was named Sunflower. The first pontiff recognized the unyielding and indomitable quality of the Holy Church. Therefore, it was designated as the Holy Flower of the Holy Church. It was engraved on the back of every holy emblem. It symbolized the will to pursue the light. Because of this, the value of the sunflowers also rose, and they could not be carelessly destroyed or planted. Once the flowers were damaged, the grower would be heavily punished. Over time, no one dared to plant the sunflowers, much less touch them. They could only look at them from afar. On the steps of the Piazza San Marco at the top of Mount Udo, an old man, sat quietly. He wore a luxurious robe studded with gems, and he held a scepter embedded with a fist-sized snow-white gem. He looked into the distance silently. Boys, boys. In the vast and silent square, an anxious woman's voice suddenly rang out. The old man slowly turned his head to look, and immediately saw an 8 or 9-year-old little boy holding a wooden sword, angrily walking over. Behind him was a graceful woman wearing a nun's robe, shouting anxiously, "Grandpa Pope, I want to duel with you." The little boy's figure was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of the old man. He looked down at the old man, sitting on the steps with a face full of anger. "Boys." The nun hurriedly pulled the boy. She bowed to the old man. "Your Holiness, I didn't discipline him properly. I will take Boyce back." She tried to pull the little boy's hand. However, there was a huge disparity in strength. She couldn't pull the little boy. The Pope faintly smiled and raised his hand to stop her actions. He looked at the little boy. "You want to duel with me?" "Yes." Boyce angrily replied. "Your Holiness, he is just joking. Don't take it to heart." The nun hurriedly looked at Boyce and said, "You're too rude. Quickly apologize to Grandpa Pontiff. Do you know what you're doing?" The Pope was interested and asked the little boy, "Why do you want to duel?" "Because I am very angry." This reason seemed reasonable, especially coming from the mouth of a little boy. "Boyce." The nun was so frightened that she hurriedly tugged at him. "How can you talk nonsense to His Holiness the Pope?" "Quickly apologize." The Pope raised his hand to stop her. He smiled faintly and said, "I like to listen to angry words. Boyce, tell me, why are you angry?" When the nun heard this, she could only let go and step aside with a bitter smile. She kept signaling the little boy with her eyes, but the little boy completely ignored her. Boyce angrily said, "Grandpa Pope, you said that I can go down the mountain to play after passing the test. Why didn't you keep your word? I want to duel with you. The instructor said that if I defeat others, others will listen to me. I will defeat you." The nun almost fainted when she heard this. Her face was pale and her body was shivering. The Pope, however, smiled lightly. He was not angry at all. "I never go back on my words. Do you still remember what I said? I said, when you can defeat the gospel instructor, I'll allow you to leave the mountain. As far as I know, you tricked the gospel instructor into eating your diarrhea medicine. That's how you defeated him, right? This kind of method is not honorable enough." At the end of his words, his face was slightly stiff, but the corners of his eyes were still smiling. Naturally, he did not have any dignity. Boyce's neck shrunk as he heard this. Embarrassment flashed on his face. But soon he raised his head and said, "I didn't use diarrhea medicine. I defeated him with my own strength. You will be the most outstanding Knight of Light in the future. Don't learn to lie," the Pope said in a serious tone. Boyce felt the seriousness of the Pope's tone, but he was young, so he had long regarded his face as more important than anything else. He didn't want to bow his head. He stubbornly raised his head. "I didn't lie. I didn't give him diarrhea medicine." Speaking up to this point, she muttered in a low voice, "With his body, how can taking some diarrhea medicine make his stomach ache?" The Pope was dumbfounded. He shook his head and smiled. "No matter what, you have to defeat him in an honorable manner. Do you understand?" Boyce pouted. "Grandpa Pope, why can't I go down the mountain?" "You are unfair." The Pope gently touched his head. "Silly boy, you are different from others. In the future you will become the most powerful person in the Holy Church. You will become the strongest person in the entire outer wall." Boyce pouted. "I will be bored to death by that time." The Pope was dumbfounded. The nun saw that the Pope wasn't angry. Instead, he was in a good mood. She took the opportunity to say, "Pontiff, Boyce is not sensible. Please forgive his rude behavior." The Pope smiled and put his hand on Boyce's shoulder. "Children get angry. You have to grow up quickly, understand?" Boyce saw that Dadian was serious. He thought for a moment, then nodded. "I will grow up as soon as possible. I will whip the gospel instructor every day and make him beg for mercy every day." The Pope couldn't help but laugh. It seemed that he had already imagined the scene. He secretly mourned for the gospel instructor for a second. "Grandpa Pope, Why are you always sitting here? Boys curiously asked. The Pope smiled and turned to look at the vast St. Mark's Square in front of him. At the end of the square was an even wider area. Countless buildings were scattered all over the ground. He said softly, "The scenery here is the best." Hawkeye was pacing back and forth on the balcony of the manor. Suddenly, he saw a figure coming from the street. It was Dean. Hawkeye's eyes lit up as he rushed out of the balcony to greet Dean. "Elder, you are finally back." Something happened. Our branch was swallowed by the 8th region. He didn't finish his words, because Dean raised his hand. His action was to shut him up. Dean was expressionless and silent. He walked into the manor and followed the passage to the underground headquarters. A woman passed by and almost bumped into him. After seeing Dean's face, she hurriedly apologized. Hawkeye scolded, "Bastard, don't you want to live?" Dean had gone far and returned to his office. "Elder, you're back." Noise stood up as he saw Dean. Hawkeye gently closed the door. He was about to continue his report when Dean opened his mouth. "From now on, you and the other 14 council members will be responsible for the matters of the 9th region. You will vote to decide." Hawkeye was stunned. "Prepare an alchemy room for me." Dean sat on the chair and put the ashes to the side. He picked up the pencil and wrote down a string of materials. "From now on, no one is allowed to disturb me without my permission. Do you understand?" Hawkeye was startled. "Elder, what are you doing? You don't understand?" "Yes, I understand." Hawkeye was somewhat puzzled. "It's just that the decisions of the 9th District have always been made by you and the other counselors. Didn't you say that you want to make the 9th District the 5th District in half a year? If you don't do anything, then I'm afraid the people below will. Whoever has an opinion can come to me." Dean indifferently said, "The previous promise won't change. The 9th region will become one of the top 5 regions in 6 months. You don't have to worry about it." Hawkeye couldn't figure out Dean. "Elder, the 8th region. I said that you will deal with everything. There will be a total of 15 people, including you, so the voting won't be deadlocked." Dean picked up the paper and handed it to Hawkeye. "Prepare these materials and send them to my alchemy room. Remember to use the best alchemy room." Hawkeye quickly took the paper and glanced at it. He found that most of the materials were metal materials. There were also some gelatinous materials. He was puzzled as he didn't know what Dean was going to make. But at least he knew that his master was an alchemist. Noise was standing on the side. He had followed Dean for a long time. He was aware that Dean's situation wasn't right when he came back. He saw that Dean was going to refine things. His mind couldn't help but think of the super shark spear and the cannon that Dean had made. He also remembered the 2 legendary items that were spread throughout the outer wall. Chapter 480. In addition, check the situation of the barbarians. Dean continued, "I want to know the institutional structure of the barbarians, as well as the information of all the members of the barbarian royal family, including their preferences in life." "Barbarians?" Hawkeye was startled. He didn't expect Dean to extend his hand to the barbarians outside the wall. Although he didn't know what Dean was going to do, but it was obviously not a trivial matter. Hawkeye resisted the urge to ask, "Yes, Elder. Go." Hawkeye left the office. Dean took out a piece of paper from the side and replaced it with a sharpened pencil. His hand quickly skimmed over the paper. The outline of the pencil sketch suddenly emerged. There were 2 different faces. Dean handed the paper to Noise. "You personally keep an eye on them." Noise took a glance and remembered their faces. He asked in confusion, "Sir, who are they?" "Knights from the Magistrate in Thuso Avenue." Dean's indifferent eyes flashed. "Remember, don't let them detect you. If they are killed, follow the killer and find the person behind it." Noyce was confused, but he knew that Dean didn't tell him anything else. There was no use in asking, so he honestly agreed. Dean was silent for a moment. He grabbed the bundle next to him and gave it to him. "Find a cemetery to bury this." Noyce was startled. "What is this?" "Ashes." Noyce's face slightly changed. "Ashes? Did something happen to Sergei?" "It's my adoptive parents." Dean's eyes were dark and cold. "They had an accident. Someone wants to inquire about me through their mouths." Choose a good location and bury them. Remember, don't engrave anything on the tombstone. Just erect a wordless tombstone. Noyce was shocked. They had an accident? How? He couldn't help but recall the faces of Jura and her husband. Dean had entrusted him to personally bring them to the commercial district. He didn't expect that the modest couple would be killed. No wonder Dean left in a hurry. No wonder he came back like a different person. His body was exuding killing intent, like a volcano that would erupt at any time. Did these two do it? Noyce looked at the portrait in his hand and couldn't help but feel angry. Dean's eyes were dark. They're just two minions. They don't have the guts to do such a thing. The person who ruled the verdict should know something about the situation, but not too much. Elder, I will assassinate them, Noyce said in an angry tone. Dean shook his head. Don't beat the grass to scare the snake. They're just scapegoats. I want to catch the person who did it. Noyce suddenly thought of a target. Is it the Mel family? It's unlikely. Dean narrowed his eyes. This person should have no enmity with me. The biggest reason why he wanted to use them to get information about me is because of my ability as a master. He wanted to get hold of my weakness so that he could threaten me in the future. But it's obvious that they didn't let go, so, as he said that, the hellish scene in the living room appeared in his mind again, and an extremely strong killing intent flashed across his eyes. This killing intent filled his eyes, causing his expression to be somewhat sinister. But in the next moment, the killing intent quickly disappeared, and his tightly clenched fist slowly relaxed. Noyce instinctively wanted to retreat as he saw the killing intent on Dean's face. Even though he knew that Dean wouldn't hurt him, he couldn't help but feel a sense of panic. Fortunately, Dean restrained his killing intent quickly. Noyce stopped his footsteps. He felt that he couldn't breathe. Elder, how do you know that they didn't let you go? In case the enemy knows about you, Dean interrupted Noyce. I wouldn't be sitting here if they let me go. Jura had told him that the Holy Church would isolate him once the ice blood disease was discovered. If someone knew about his weakness, then they could easily control him. Based on this point alone, he knew that Jura didn't disclose this matter. Because of this, the pain in his heart was heavier. Noyce was startled and became silent. Go. Dean closed his eyes wearily. Noyce glanced at him, picked up the ashes, bowed, and left quietly. Duddian slowly opened his eyes after Noyce left. The previous tiredness was gone. He took the paper and began to draw the blueprint of the new invention. In the conference room. What? He doesn't care? We will decide the future by voting. Others have come to our door, but he is scared. It's the first time I've seen such an elder. Don't quarrel. Isn't it the same if we vote? Yes, I believe that the elder has his reasons. 14 counselors argued fiercely. Several of them supported Dean. One of them was Angelia, who had been punished by Dean. Hawkeye smiled slightly. He had already expected such a situation. He raised his hand and said, Everyone, this time the 8th region wants to swallow our 13th branch. Although the 13th branch doesn't have many resources and the terrain is remote, but it is the border of our 9th region. Once they tear it open, there will be more trouble in the future. Moreover, if we endure this time, the other regions will dare to treat us casually. Nonsense, of course we can't. Tamakaw had a fiery temper and rolled his eyes. Yes, the 8th region is deliberately provoking us. They've been eyeing that place for a long time. Everyone, are we going to sacrifice or protect? Let's make our stance clear. Of course we will protect. Most of the council expressed their support to protect the 13th branch. Only 4 or 5 people didn't express their views, and 1 person held the idea of abandoning the 13th branch. Hawkeye, didn't the elder say that he would lead the 9th region to become one of the top 5 regions in 6 months? A woman dressed in an enchanting dress said, How long has it been? Why are you retreating now? Do you think it's impossible? Don't be like this even if you can't do it. Hawkeye didn't expect that the topic would be brought up again. He bitterly smiled. The elder said that he will definitely fulfill his promise. Within 6 months, our 9th region will become one of the top 5 regions. There is still a long time before the deadline. Everyone, please be patient. Today we will only talk about the 13th branch. Chapter 481. Time passed in a flash. 2 days passed. The outer wall was calm on the surface, but there were turbulent waves in the dark. After voting, the 9th Division finally chose to go to war with the 8th Division. They took back the 13th Division that had been looted, and Tamakaw personally led a team to guard and rebuild it. This kind of large-scale conflict often happened, especially between the neighboring divisions that had a conflict of resources. It was inevitable that they would either cooperate or have conflicts. While the 13th Division was being rebuilt, Dean was immersed in an alchemy room of the highest specifications in the headquarters of the 9th Division. He was immersed in studying his new divine incantation. Before the new divine incantation was completed, he had decided not to interfere with the affairs of the 9th Division. Whether it was the loss of profits or the annexation of territories, it had nothing to do with him. When he first took office, he didn't care about the affairs of the 9th Region, as he didn't want to divert his energy. After all, no matter how well the people of the 9th District did, they were only working for the monastery and the Radiant Church. But the new invention was different. It was his own thing. Moreover, this new invention would be the strongest weapon in his hands. He would be able to take revenge for Jura and her husband once it was completed. He would be able to plan to overthrow the inner wall and break the shackles of the shackles. Since there must be someone who would become a king, then why not do it himself? In a dark hall located in the underground. 2 days have passed. Why haven't they made a move? A figure wearing a white devil mask spoke in a hoarse voice. His voice was like dry and cracked leaves, and it caused one to be unable to help but get goosebumps and feel a chill. A graceful figure was kneeling in front of him. She whispered, "The law enforcers have been tracking them. Except for normal colleagues, no one else has contact with them." The white-faced evil spirit raised his head slightly, and his deep eyes revealed a trace of coldness. He said, "It seems that the newly appointed elder is not the genius oracle who disappeared. The old fellows of the mystic sect, it's rare to see a talent like this." The graceful figure bowed her head in silence. "Go and clean up. Don't leave any traces." The white mask indifferently said. The graceful figure respectfully replied, "Yes." Knock. Dudian was engraving the drawings of a part when there was a knock on the door. He frowned slightly and turned around. His slightly focused pupils penetrated through the thick door and saw a human-shaped heat outline. He immediately recognized that it was noise from the intensity of the heat. He let go of the pen, got up, twisted the valve on the side of the door, and opened the door. "Elder." Noyce was startled as he saw Dean's messy hair. "The 2 knights of the magistrate that you asked me to follow were killed today." Dean narrowed his eyes. "Did you find the person who killed them?" 2 masked men killed them. I followed them all the way to a manor in Simptown. They didn't come out for a long time. I guess it's the same as here. The dark church is under the manor." Noyce said. "Simptown." Dean's chest slightly moved up and down. There was a trace of crazy killing intent in his eyes. It's Pluto's territory. Noyce was startled. The killing intent in Dean's eyes converged. Noyce was startled by the huge change. Dean coldly said, "Don't follow me. Don't beat the grass and alert the snake. You and Hawkeye will attend all the meetings in the 9th Region and record the contents of the meetings. If there are any actions of the 9th Region that implicate Sergei and the New World Consortium, then report to me." "I know." Noyce nodded. There was a trace of awe on his face. Dean turned around and closed the door. At night, there was a trace of tiredness in Dean's eyes as he came out of the alchemy room. He went to his office and took out a bottle of red wine from the cabinet on the wall. He opened the bottle and took 2 sips. Ever since he saw this row of wine, he thought of using wine to replace the high-calorie food he had previously needed. To his surprise, the wine was really effective. It could relieve the hunger and cold in his body. The only pity was that he couldn't drink too much, or he would easily get drunk. "I should ask Hawkeye to ask someone to brew some white wine to warm my body." Dean put back the bottle of red wine. Although the wine was bright, but the warmth was lacking. He changed into a set of black nocturnal clothes and a suit of exquisite workmanship over the nocturnal clothes. He tied a dagger to the side of his leg, opened the drawer, and took out a document inside. He looked at it a few times, confirmed that there were no mistakes, and left the office. Elder. Hawkeye was surprised as he saw Dean. Elder, what are you doing? I'm going out to a banquet. Dean adjusted his bow tie. How about it? Hawkeye looked at him, just in time. Dean nodded slightly and left. Hawkeye opened his mouth, but in the end, it turned into a wry smile. When an elder of another district went out, there would be at least one knight commander protecting them. Who knows how many knight captains would follow them in the dark? However, this elder of his was always alone. Even his own family couldn't find a trace of him. Fortunately, the strength of the elder was a bit stronger than him. No one could protect him. In the night, Dudian went all the way out of the manor. He quickly sneaked into the dark alleys and quickly left the place. He took off his coat bit by bit as he moved stealthily. The bow tie and suit that he had tied neatly were all thrown into a dirty trash can in an alley. The trash can lid was stained with leftover food and gave off a rancid smell. Even if someone found the clothes, they would not be able to smell the original smell on them. Whoosh! Dean quickly left the bustling area and came to the front of the Golden Wall. At the moment, the Golden Wall had been repaired by many workers. It had been restored and strengthened a lot. There were soldiers patrolling back and forth on the wall. The barbarians were still entrenched in the Red Maple Mountains. The military didn't dare to relax the defense of the Golden Wall. Dean took a look, but didn't force his way through. He turned around and went around the giant wall. The edge of the giant wall was sparsely populated. It was a large wasteland. The closer to the giant wall, the stronger the radiation. So there were almost no people living in this area. Dean took off his coat. The wings on his back stretched out from the transparent skin film. They quickly became thin and hard. They were as sharp as knives. They flapped under his control and soared into the air. After flying to the giant wall, he ran through the Golden Wall's guard range and landed again. He entered the suburbs outside the Golden Wall. This place used to be the territory of the people inside the wall, but now it was deserted. All the villages and towns were as empty as a ghost village. Only houses were left standing in the dark. It was a horrible scene. Dean shuttled through the deserted towns and went straight to the Red Maple Mountains. Cliff. Yvette was sitting on the edge of the cliff. She could hear the rumbling sound of the waterfall. It was permanent, so it was easy to ignore it. Amidst the loud rumbling, she looked up at the faint starlight in the night sky, a little lost in thought. With the help of Glenn, she had sneaked back from the Golden Wall. However, after not seeing her for a short period of time, her hometown and clansmen suddenly became somewhat unfamiliar, especially her brothers and sisters. In the past, they would always play and laugh together, practice swordsmanship, horse riding, and archery together, but now when they saw her, they all avoided her, as if she was infected with a plague that could spread at any time. She felt lonely. She knew what they were worried about. She was arrested, but she came back safe and sound. It didn't make sense. Although she explained the reason to her father, but she felt that her father didn't believe her. I'm not a spy. Even if they don't believe me, I'm clear about it. Yvette thought to herself, as long as I don't do anything like a spy, they will naturally believe that I am not a spy after a long time. Chapter 482. Dean's eyes lit up as he looked at the familiar figure sitting on the edge of the cliff. In order to find her, he had spent more than 2 hours in the Red Maple Mountains. Fortunately, he had thermal vision, so he could see all the hidden sentries in the dark. Otherwise, he would have been detected. Dean saw that she was still unaware of his presence when he was 2 or 3 meters away from her. He was no longer polite as he held the dagger and stabbed it out. Yvette's first reaction was that her father had sent someone to find her. But in the next moment, she dispelled this thought because a strong killing intent came from behind her, causing all the hairs on her body to stand up. Just as she was about to pull out the dagger on her leg to counterattack, a cold dagger had already appeared from her shoulder. It was pressed against her neck, and the cold blade lightly cut into the tender flesh of her neck. Her body stiffened as she didn't dare to act rashly. At the same time, she felt that the person didn't want to kill her immediately. The dagger did not cut off her neck. Instead, it stopped. Yvette was slightly relieved, but the feeling of being strangled by the Grim Reaper made her heart tremble. She forced herself to calm down and said, "Who are you? Do you know who I am? How dare you assassinate me? My father will pull you out if anything happens to me." Dean lowered his voice and said in a hoarse voice, "Be honest. Who helped you come back? What is your purpose?" Yvette was startled and her heart sank. She clenched the dagger in her hand and said, "Who are you? Why do you ask this? Who is your master?" "Don't be long-winded," Dean shouted. "Be honest. If you don't say it, your head will be gone." Dean tightened his grip on the dagger and cut into her neck. Blood flowed out from the dagger. Yvette's face turned ugly. "A person with a high position within the wall helped me come back. I don't have any purpose. I just want to go back to my home." "Oomph," Dean coldly snorted. "No purpose? The war is turbulent, and we have just suffered a defeat. Tell me honestly, did that person ask you to come back as a spy and collude with him?" "No, it's not." There was a trace of anger in Yvette's eyes. If it weren't for the dagger stabbing her neck, she would have stood up and vented all the anger in her heart on this person. "I won't be a spy and betray my people. That person just sent me back. He didn't ask me to do anything. Why can't you believe me?" "Oomph," Dean sneered. At the same time, he glanced at the side. There were a few figures coming over. There were the people he deliberately left behind when he came over. Seeing that the time was almost right, he no longer delayed. He raised the dagger and stabbed it. "Since you don't want to talk, then go to hell." He raised the dagger and stabbed it. Yvette's body was drenched in cold sweat as she heard Dean's words. She instantly seized the gap and lifted her dagger to block. Bang! The daggers collided with each other, creating sparks. Yvette's arm shook violently, and she almost fell into the cliff behind her. "Who is it?" The people patrolling in the distance heard the noise and shouted, rushing over quickly. Dean hesitated for a moment, but turned around and ran away. Yvette turned around to see Dean's face. Although the light was dim, but the barbarians had excellent night vision. Although Dean raised his hand to cover his face, but Yvette was still able to see his face. She couldn't help but be shocked. Whoosh! Dean quickly left and disappeared into the night. Soon, several patrolling barbarian guards came over. They were surprised to see Yvette on the edge of the cliff. "Princess, just now," Yvette recovered and waved her hand. "It's nothing. It seems that we saw someone run away." The guard looked at her suspiciously. Yvette said in a gloomy tone, "Someone wanted to assassinate me. Fortunately, you came in time." The guards were surprised. "Someone wanted to assassinate you? Who is so bold?" "Princess, did you see his face?" The face flashed in Yvette's mind. She would never forget that face. "I didn't see it clearly." The guards looked at each other. One of them immediately said, "Princess, it's getting late. You should go back and rest. We will immediately inform all the checkpoints to find this person." Yvette nodded. The guards quickly split up and left. "He is one of us. How can you find him?" Yvette looked at the guards who left. There was a trace of bitterness in her mouth. "I don't have a rebellious heart. Why do you have to force me? Why can't time prove my innocence? Why?" Whoosh! Dean went straight to a dangerous place in the Red Maple Mountains. The terrain was steep and breathtaking. Even a senior hunter like Yvette would find it difficult to climb down. Such a dangerous terrain was the main reason why the Red Maple Mountains were easy to defend and difficult to attack. He spread his wings and flew out from this place, disappearing into the night. More than 10 minutes later, when he flew out of the Red Maple Mountains, he slowly landed in the wilderness. He raised his hand and rubbed his face to restore his original appearance. As for the face he fabricated before, it was the servant of a member of the barbarian royal family that he asked Hawkeye to investigate. This barbarian royal family member was Yvette's brother. He had high authority in the royal family and gathered strong barbarians from various tribes. And the one he fabricated was one of the more outstanding Bear Tribe savage experts. "Yvette, don't blame me. I can't allow failure. You must become a king and become my chess piece." Dean clenched his fists. The night wind blew, and he felt a bit cold. He turned his head to look at the direction of the Red Maple Mountain. After a while, he slowly withdrew his gaze, wiped the blood off the dagger, put it back to the leggings, and ran forward. Tonight, in addition to making Yvette make up her mind, he also wanted to go outside the giant wall to collect the Great Splitter's sharp blade. He lacked a good melee weapon. The Great Splitter's sharp blade was undoubtedly a natural magic weapon. I didn't expect that there would be a terrifying master hidden among the barbarians. Dean recalled the time when he was looking for Yvette in the Red Maple Mountains. He found a place on the top of the mountain that was heavily guarded. It seemed to be the tent of the tribal chief. It was much bigger than the other tents he had seen along the way. He wanted to directly kidnap the tribal chief. In this way, compared to cultivating Yvette, it was much easier. Fortunately, he had thermal vision. He didn't get close to the tent, but he saw a figure that was as red as the sun. The body was exuding heat like a surging flame. It was comparable to Aisha, who he had seen in the inner wall. Aisha was one of the most terrifying powerhouses he had seen so far. The only ones who could be compared to her were the dragon girl and the patrolling figure that he saw on the giant wall when he sneaked into the inner wall with Gwyneth and Glenn. It could be seen how terrifying the strength of the person inside the tent was. According to Dean's observation, this person was several times stronger than Francis. He believed that if he fought with Francis, he would win 7-3. He would win 7 and Francis would win 3. But compared to Aisha or to the patrolling man on the giant wall, he didn't have the slightest heart to fight because he had no chance of winning. Francis is also a limitless saint. Aisha and the dragon girl should be above the limitless. According to the dragon girl, a senior hunter should be able to hunt monsters within level 30. A saint should be able to hunt monsters within level 40. Francis is estimated to be around level 45. I haven't fought with my full strength, but I should be able to barely cope with monsters within level 50. Aisha and the patrolling figure should be able to deal with monsters above level 50. They should be at the same level as the dragon girl. Dudian thought in his heart. Although he didn't have thermal vision, so he was able to directly observe the strength of the dragon clan girl. But he was not sure if there was a stronger existence above them. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.